The time for convening has arrived. The Senate will come to order. At this time, I will ask all unauthorized personnel to exit the chamber. I recognize the senator from the 28th. And Senator from the 28th, take your time because it looks like our members are having a hard time getting here this morning.
Well, good morning, Mr. President. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I know I did. One thing I thought found interesting, you being the fine-tuned athlete, college athlete you once were, on this day in 1987, the NCAA canceled SMU's entire 1987 football schedule for gross violations of NCAA rules regarding athletic corruption. AKA death penalty.
Now what they're doing then is legal now, huh?
It's all legal
changed.
now.
Yeah,
so, did you get your check from when you played college ball?
No, I did not. I
never did. Okay.
I wasn't that good.
Well, Mr. President, today's actually, it's also National Kahlua Day, National Protein Day, National Strawberry Day. Big one here in Georgia, it's National Polar Bear Day. Go figure. National Cupcake Day. And it's Play More Cards Day. All right, Mr. President, I'm going to give us we got a great lineup of pages today. And so if you'll bear with me, I'm going to go through them all. So with us today, we have Landon Bill, Bryce Chapman, Davion Davis, Zaylin Lee, Emma Sconyers, Marcy Summer, Thaden Roomball, Mushmi Carey, Elizabeth Warren, Will Griffiths, Kelby Hendricks, Jaylee Pearson, Jasmine Pittman, Sarah Beth Bushnell, Josephine Glass, Kai Ridley, Jasmine Stewart, Madeline Simmons, Caden Gant, Malia Meisher, Bowling Bushnell, and Grace Pham. So thank our pages today. Thank you for the work you're going to provide for us and the great service you're going to do for the state of Georgia today. So thank y'all for being here.
All right.
Mr. President, the Journal has been read in its entirety and found to be correct.
So it's a National Strawberry Day, you said?
It sure is.
Does it mention Taylor County being the strawberry capital of the country?
I'm sure Google mentions that.
Oh, okay. Well, it is, for those who didn't know. Taylor County, Georgia. Strawberry capital of the world right there.
Wow.
So.
You learn something new every day in this place.
I know. Is there objection to dispensing of the reading of the journal? Chair hears none. The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? Chair hears none. The journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills and resolutions to introduce, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. First reading and references of Senate bills.
Senate Bill 239 by Senator Merritt of the 9th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to landlord and tenant so as to require landlords to provide. Senate Bill 240 by Senator Walker III of the 20th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to retirement and pension so as to revise the minimum and maximum allowable. Senate Bill 241 by Senator Hickman of the 4th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to mandatory education for children between the ages of 6 and 16.
Education and youth.
Senate Bill 242 by Senator Dolezal of the 27th, a bill to be entitled an act relating to statute of frauds so as to provide that agreements with a value in excess of $10,000 shall be in writing to provide for related matters. Senate Bill 243 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to selling and other trade practices so as to require a manufacturer to provide certain items necessary
Science and
for
technology.
Senate Bill 244 by Senator Anderson of the 43rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to driver's licenses so as to authorize the use of fingerprint
Public
scans.
safety.
Senate Bill 245 by Senator McLaurin of the 14th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to conduct of proceedings in criminal trials so as to provide. Senate Bill 246 by Senator Hodges of the 3rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to the Georgia Board of Healthcare Workforce so as to provide for student loan repayment for
Higher
certain
education.
Senate Bill 247 by Senator McLaurin of the 14th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to removal of improperly parked cars or trespassing personal property, concurrent
Public
jurisdiction.
safety.
Senate Bill 248 by Senator Merritt of the 19th and others, Bill to be entitled, an act relating to general provisions regarding county so as to provide provisions relating to ordinances.
Slogo, general.
Senate Bill 249 by Senator Beach of the 21st, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to grand jury so as to require secrecy and protection from unauthorized disclosure of grand jury proceedings, including special grand jury proceedings, to provide penalties for unauthorized
Judiciary.
disclosures. Senate Bill 250 by Senator Dixon of the 45th and others, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to definitions and authority to enter a multi-year lease, purchase, or
Education
lease.
and youth.
Senate Bill 251 by Senator Estevez of the 6th and others, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to general provisions regarding ad valorem taxation
Finance.
of property. Senate Bill 252 by Senator Hannah Vitarte of the 31st and others, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to other educational programs under the Quality Basic Education Act so as to authorize.
Education and youth.
Senate Bill 253 by Senator Islam of the 7th and others, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to transfers or purchases of firearms subject to the NICS information concerning persons.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 254 by Senator Brass of the 28th, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to selling and other trade practices so as to provide requirements for earned wage access
Insurance
services.
and labor.
Senate Bill 255 by Senator Payne of the 54th and others, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to gambling so as to revise provisions relative to dog fighting, to prohibit fighting of dogs
Public
and
safety.
gamecocks. Senate Bill 256 by Senator Mallow of the 2nd and others, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to general provisions applicable to counties and municipal
Slogo,
corporations.
general.
Senate Bill 257 by Senator Mallow of the 2nd, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to definitions relative to enterprise zones so as to change the
Slogo,
definition.
general.
Senate Resolution 202 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others, a resolution urging members of the
Interstate
United States.
cooperations.
Senate Resolution 203 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others, a resolution creating the Senate Safe
Rules.
Firearm. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Hey, Freddie.
But it's not. I know, but it's supposed to.
Thank you. First reading of House bills.
House Bill 36 by Representative Martin of the 49th, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to ad valorem taxation of property so as to revise the language required to be included in the notices of current
Finance.
assessment. House Bill 95 by Representative Knight of the 134th and others, a bill to be entitled, an act relating
Finance.
to revenue and taxation. House Bill 138 by Representative Crowe of the 118th, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to definitions of property tax
Finance.
exemptions. House Bill 142 by Representative Maynor of the 56th and others, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to campus policemen so as to provide for the establishment of
Public
unified.
safety.
House Bill 162 by Representative McDonald of the 26th and others, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to income taxes so as to provide for
Finance.
a one-time. House Bill 165 by Representative New of the 64th and others, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to when public disclosure not required relative to inspection
Natural
of public
resources.
records. House Bill 222 by Representative Lumsden of the 12th and others, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to insurance so as to clarify, streamline, and make transparent the practices
Insurance
of the
and labor.
department. House Bill 319 by Representative Martin of the 49th, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to scholarships, loans, and grants so as to abolish
Higher
the Georgia.
education.
House Bill 354 by Representative Camp of the 135th, a bill to be entitled, an act to authorize the assessment and collection of a technology fee by the probate court of Pike County to identify the.
Slogo.
House Bill 391 by Representative Green of the 154th, a bill to be entitled, an act to amend an act providing a homestead exemption from Early County School District ad valorem taxes for educational purposes in the amount of $150,000 of the assessed value of the homestead for 5 years for residents.
Slogo.
House Bill 395 by Representative Huddleston of the 72nd, a bill to be entitled, an act to amend an act.
Slogo.
House Bill 422 by Representative Birch of the 176th and Corbett of the 174th, a bill to be entitled, an act to amend an act to create a board of
Slogo.
elections. House Bill 519 by Representative Parrish of the 158th, a bill to be entitled, an act to create the Emmanuel County Public Facilities
Slogo.
Authority. House Resolution 66 by Representative Gamble of the 15th and others, a resolution ratifying Governor Brian P. Kemp's.
Finance.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
Secretary read reports of standing committees, please.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Children and Family has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 45, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 133, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 216, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd District Chairman. Senate Committee on Economic Development and Tourism has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 55, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 127, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Beach of the 21st District Chairman. Senate Committee on Education and Youth has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 4, due pass. Senate Bill 202, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dixon of the 45th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Education and Youth has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 98, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dixon of the 45th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 31, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 66, due pass. Senate Bill 92, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 100, due pass. Senate Bill 148, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Resolution 140, due pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Cowser of the 46th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Retirement has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 199, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Williams of the 25th District Chairman. Senate Committee on Rules has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Resolution 114, due pass. Senate Resolution 175, due pass. Senate Resolution 176, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Brass of the 28th District Chairman. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Second readers.
Senate Bill 10 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others, offenses against public order in motor vehicles and traffic, knowingly attending and facilitating an illegal drag race or a laying drags exhibition, punishment provide. Senate Bill 19 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, courts, collection of passport application and processing fees by clerks of the superior courts and probate court judges provide. Senate Bill 52 by Senator Parent of the 42nd and others, Georgia Student Finance Commission to establish participation and performance targets for the program require. Senate Bill 76 by Senator Merritt of the 9th and others, state employees health insurance plan, state health benefits plan to cover insulin medication at a reduced rate provide. Senate Bill 78 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others, off-road vehicles, civil forfeiture of any off-road vehicle operated while fleeing police or driving aggressively authorized. Senate Bill 86 by Senator Brass of the 28th and others, education eligible students participating in the dual enrollment program to access Hope Career Grant funds for certain CTA courses allows. Senate Bill 137 by Senator Burns of the 23rd and others, tuition equalizing grants at private colleges and universities, definition of approved school revised. Senate Bill 140 by Senator Summers of the 13th and others, hospitals, the treatment of gender dysphoria in minors performed in hospitals and other licensed healthcare facilities prohibit certain surgical procedures. Senate Bill 155 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, dangerous instrumentalities and practices, provisions relating to harming a law enforcement animal revised. Senate Bill 158 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others, property insurance, insurance premium discount or rate reduction for property owners, tornado, hurricane, or other catastrophic windstorm events provide. Senate Bill 160 by Senator Still of the 48th and others, employment security provisions. Senate Bill 191 by Senator Still of the 48th and others, motor vehicles and traffic, authorizing joinder of motor carriers and their insurance carriers and tort and contract causes of action provisions repeal. Senate Bill 217 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others, eliminating Ghost Plates Act and Act. Mr. President, that completes the order.
It is now time for the morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, y'all. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the following senators for business inside the Capitol: 35, 36, and 42, sir.
Without objection, the 35th, the 36th, and the 42nd will be excused. Senator from the 21st.
Yes, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 27th for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, Senator from the 27th is excused. Senator from the 52nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 45th and the 48th districts for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, senators from the 45th and the 48th are excused. Are there any other motions to excuse? Secretary will call the roll of senators. Signify your presence by voting yea switch. Secretary will unlock the machines. It is now time for our morning devotion. All senators, please take your seats and cease all conversation. I would ask the doorkeepers to secure the chambers at this time. We've got a special guest from the wonderful town of Statesboro, Georgia, here today, and this gentleman, this pastor we have with us today, I was at an event in Statesboro back during the campaign season, and our pastor back here delivered such a message and sang such a chord that he had me ready to lace up my shoes and tape my ankles ready to go. He was magnificent. I don't think he's going to sing for us here today, but he is going to deliver the message. So I'll ask that our senator from Statesboro introduce our chaplain of the day. Thank you.
Can we say the Pledge of Allegiance, please? American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and the principles of which it stands, wisdom, justice, moderation, and courage. Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great honor to be have a great friend of mine and Joanne's here today, Pastor Donald Chavers. Donald and I've known Donald now for probably about 5 years, and I've heard him preach, I've heard him sing, I've heard him pray, and he's truly a man of God. Those of y'all that ever get a chance to hear him sing, and I know several of y'all were at our event that Lieutenant Governor mentioned a few minutes ago in Statesboro. I'm sure you heard him. He rattled the windows at the event. He's a pastor at Agape Worship Center in Statesboro, a great man of God, and he loves people. Donald is an advocate for our community, Statesboro, Bullock County, and the leadership that rests in it. His sister is actually one of our city councilwomen, Miss Paulette Shavers. His love for community flows out of the abundant passion for reaching all through love. Whether in the pulpit or in the park, Donald is determined to seize every moment while living on a purpose. Please welcome Pastor Donald Shavers.
Lieutenant Governor, Senator Hickman, a daily devotional, something for you to think about. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 13 says, "For as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body are one, being many are one body, so also is Christ." The deepest level of communication is communion. It's wordless, beyond speech. It's synergy. Synergy is on display in this text, Corinthians. Synergy, it's more than words as well. It's a spirit, a presence that brings people together to get a job done. When synergy is at its highest and greatest, it seizes every opportunity to engage teamwork. Teamwork supersizes any work. The work completed by the group is always greater than any one individual action. Working together has always been God's plan from the beginning. However, before synergy can have its perfect work in us, we must first be true to our authentic self. Be true enough to have the behavior to move in courage, great courage. Courage enough to say what needs to be said and do what needs to be done. Self-confidence allows one to value and respect the differences in others and to build on strengths and compensate on weaknesses just to get the job done. Synergy is the one body mindset that opens one up to innovative and efficient options and possibilities. It's a better way of just doing an old thing. The old hymnologist said, to serve this present age. It is the job of every leader to make sure that everyone knows that they are a part of the body, a part of the solution, and not just a part, but a vital part. We must learn to live together as brothers and sisters or perish together as fools. We cannot live only for ourselves because to 1,000 fibers unite us together. I have nephews, and 3 of them were helping me catch a cow to band him. And one nephew, MJ, he's quick on his feet. He ran and caught the cow, but he's light. At the most, He's 120 pounds. He's got his arms around the neck of the cow. I got another nephew. His name's Mitch. He's got the heart of a lion. He runs and grabs him. He's lighter than MJ. He probably weighs 80 pounds. I have another nephew. His name's Isaiah. He's a big, thick, robust guy. He's heavy. MJ catches the cow, tries to hold him. He drags him all over the pen. Big Mitch, who I call Fat Puppy, he grabs the cow along with MJ, and the cow is carrying him all over the field. And I yell at Isaiah and say, Isaiah, we need you. We need you. You're a vital part. Isaiah runs and grabs the cow with his hands. I said, no, we don't need your hands. We need your weight on him. Would you just put your weight on the animal? Would you just throw all of your weight? He thought his weight was insignificant and something demeaning, but it was exactly what we needed. And once he placed his weight on the animal, we subdued him. It brought him to the ground. I said all of that to say this, that as you serve Georgia and serve us, we must remember the power of synergy and never forget that everybody's significant and their role is very important. There's an old song, and I'll close, that was written, and it says, I need you. You need me. We're all a part of God's body. Stand with me. Agree with me. We're all a part of God's body. Stand with me, agree with me. It's in his will that every need be supplied. You are important to me. I need you to survive. I'll pray for you. You pray for me. I love you. I need you to survive. I won't harm you with words from my mouth because I need you to survive. For this body of leaders, your task is to find commonality among your fellow leaders here to make sure that united we stand. To make sure that united we stand. Remember, any member or person in this house is very significant. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for these great leaders that you have provided for us. I pray now, Father, for your wise counsel. I pray that you would speak to their hearts. God, and should there be differences, I pray that understanding would come, that the greater good would come from it. Now, be the blessed Father that you are, and bless and protect them from this day forward. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
It is always a pleasure to have the doctor of the day with us, and we've got a fine gentleman that's been with us a few years now running, and from Rome, Georgia. And I call on our senator from the 52nd to introduce our doctor of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've got him in Rome now, but he was a Athens boy growing up. He went to Clark Central, same as our governor did. Now, Dr. Brad Bushnell here was valedictorian of his class, so I assume he and the governor graduated in different years. Not real sure. He was a star there in cross country and track, and matter of fact, he and his son Bo, and he's got his daughter Sarah Beth with him. They're big runners. They ran a half marathon yesterday. I was going to join them, but I had to work in the hospital, and I wasn't able to run it with them, so I hate that. But he graduated then from Vanderbilt after being valedictorian. Then he's president of Phi Beta Kappa and highest honors. You know the guy you hated in school that was overachiever. And then so he could learn to count all his money, he got his MBA degree, but he got it from Auburn University, so I'm not sure it was that helpful. He then went to Madrid and studied Spanish, Medical College of Georgia, did his residency at Chapel Hill, and has been a physician for the U.S. ski team. Right now he's the president-elect of the Georgia Orthopedic Society and a longtime friend of our senator here from the 32nd District, a fellow orthopedic surgeon. And he served as a reserve sheriff and as the SWAT team physician up there. He's going to be on the fourth continent here shortly in Asia. Will be the fourth continent he's run a marathon on. His goal is to run a marathon on every continent. So with that, I bring to you Dr. Brad Bushnell.
Thank you, everyone. I know you all have a busy day today, so I'll be quick. But I was just reflecting that 3 years ago today, I got to serve as Doctor of the Day. And we sat down in the medical aid station, and my son, who was also paging that day, had a exchange trip scheduled later that summer to Japan. And we were wondering if the Asian regional virus might impact our travel plans. Little did we know that 3 weeks later, that little regional virus in Asia would be the coronavirus that we all have a little bit of experience with now. So what's really neat is to sit here today and see the Capitol back to its old self. No masks required, all kind of guests out in the main hall, the PAGE program back in play, and most importantly, to look at what our state has done during those 3 years. And I think it was very telling with our devotion this morning that we need you to survive. I love those words because I look at all of you in this chamber. Some of you are new, but many of you were in your positions of leadership as we weathered that pandemic. And so as a lifelong Georgian and on behalf of our medical community, I just want to say thank you for your leadership during this past 3 years. We have not only survived, but we as a state have thrived. And a lot of that is because of what's been done in this room and in this building. So thank you for that. Good luck on your busy day today. And again, thank you for letting me have the honor of serving as your Doctor of the Day.
We have some special guests with us today. The ladies dressed in red today represent the proud Delta Sigma Theta sorority, and let's give them all a round of applause for being here and They always bring a big crowd to the Capitol, and we always like having them here as well. So I recognize Senator from the 55th to speak to, actually, let me let the Secretary read the resolution first. Secretary?
Senate Resolution 61 by Senator Butler of the 55th and others, a resolution commending Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated for its 110 years of service and recognizing February 27th, 2023 as Delta Day at the state capitol and for other purposes. Whereas Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is a sisterhood of college-educated women dedicated to academic excellence and committed to community service. And whereas members of this illustrious sisterhood serve as elected officials, lend support to various local communities, and lead dialogues on public policy throughout their communities. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the efforts of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated for its 110 years of continued commitment to public service and its work in making the state of Georgia a better place in which to live, and recognize February 27th, 2023 as Delta Day at the state capitol. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Now it is my honor to call on the Senator from the 55th, our minority leader, to speak to the resolution and introduce these good-looking ladies behind me here. So
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. But before I start my presentation, let me just recognize the women that have come to visit us in the Senate that has making countless number of records. If you can stand where you are and let us see you. There's an island over here and an island over there. Thank you so much for coming to visit with us today so that we can brag on you in grand style. Delta Sigma Theta sorority was founded on January 13, 1913 by 22 collegiate women at Howard University in Washington, D.C. The sorority was founded as a sisterhood of college-educated African-American women who aimed to promote academic excellence and social activism. Delta Sigma Theta's first public act was participating in the Women's Suffrage March in Washington, D.C. on March 3, 1913, just 2 months after the sorority's founding. In the 1940s and 50s, the sorority focused on civil rights activism, with members participating in boycotts, protests, and other forms of direct action. In 1960, Delta Sigma Theta became the first African-American organization to be granted NGO status at the United Nations, allowing the sorority to participate in the global fight for human rights and social justice. Today, Delta Sigma Theta has over 250,000 members and more than 1,000 chapters worldwide, making it one of the largest African-American sororities in the world. Delta Sigma Theta, Inc., Atlanta Alumni Chapter, has been working to address the issue of human trafficking through their Stop the Traffic initiative. The program provides education and awareness to the community and collaborates with law enforcement agencies to identify and rescue victims. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc., Atlanta Alumni Chapter's Delta Gems, Growing and Empowering Myself Successfully program, provides young girls in the metro area with mentorship, leadership, development, and academic support. Many of you might remember Delta Days at the state capitol has instituted the Georgiana Sinkfield Servant Assembly, the Potter E. Colston Trailblazer Award, named the first African-American female commissioner elected in Fayette County, Georgia. The sorority's physical and mental health program offers a range of services to promote health and wellness in the community, including workshops on stress management, healthy eating, and fitness. The sorority's political awareness and involvement program encourages civic engagement and advocacy, working to educate and mobilize voters in the metro Atlanta area. Delta Sigma Theta Atlanta Alumni Chapter's scholarship program offers financial assistance to high school seniors in the metro Atlanta area who are pursuing higher education. The program awards scholarships based on academic achievement, community involvement, and leadership potential. Now, I need you to help me recognize the following members of the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc. Candace J. Delaney. She's the Georgia Social Action Lead on Delta Days at the Capitol, co-chair. Brunessa Drayton, Georgia Social Action Lead. Dr. Sheila Fleming, Delta Days at the Capitol, co-chair. Alfreda Coward, Southern Region Social Action Coordinator. And Michelle Nelson Hawkins, South Georgia South Coordinator. Please, members of the Senate of this august body, please give our guests a round of applause and thanks for all of their hard work. And this resolution is for them.
Perfect. All right. Good job, Senator. You done? You good? We have some special Mercer Law students here today. So obviously Mercer always does a fantastic job with a lot of their undergraduate and postgraduate programs, and it's glad to have them down. Secretary, read the resolution, please.
Senate Resolution 211 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others, a resolution congratulating the Mercer Law Moot Court Board for winning the 73rd Annual National Moot Court Competition for other purposes. Whereas Mercer Law has built a legacy of excellence in moot court competitions and developed students whose oral and written advocacy skills stand far beyond their peers. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body congratulate the Mercer Law Moot Court Board for winning the 73rd Annual National Moot Court Competition and extend best wishes for their continued success. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I call on our pro tem, Senator from the 18th, to speak to the resolution.
Good morning, colleagues, and thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to honor the members of the Mercer Law Moot Court team visiting us at the Capitol today. The Mercer's Moot Court team has spent countless hours crafting their oral and written advocacy skills as it showed off in a recent competition I'm going to tell you about in just a moment. More than a quarter of Mercer's School of Law faculty coach the Moot Court teams, and over a third of the faculty contribute to the Moot Court selection process. Well, over the last 14 months, Mercer Law students have won the national championships to the National Moot Court Competition, the All-Star National Mock Trial Challenge, the American Bar Association Negotiation Competition, and the American Bar Association Client Counseling Competition. On top of this great success, just this past year in 2022, 189 law schools from across the country competed in the 73rd Annual National Moot Court Competition. And folks and friends and colleagues, I am so proud to announce that Mercer University School of Law, my alma mater, has brought home the 2022 National Moot Court Advocacy Championship back to Georgia and back to Macon. During the yeah, great, thank you. During the national championship competition, John Flowers, who's behind me, received the National Best Oral Advocate Award. And Zach Mullinax, behind me, received the runner-up National Best Oral Advocate Award. And additionally, Mercer Law Team was the national runner-up for the Best Brief Award. So I've got on the dais behind me, on the rostrum behind me, and I'm honored to have it with me, in addition to John Flowers and Zachary Mullinax, Coach Stephen Greenway, alumni coach Eliza Gouda, and the Director of Advocacy, Katie Powers. Also in the gallery, I think we may have several members of the Mercer Moot Court team, along with Dean Karen Snedden, who's actually on the rostrum with us, and supporters of these bright young students and future lawyers of tomorrow. I really can't tell you and express how happy and proud I am of this team and of Mercer University School of Law. You have made, I assure you, the team, you've made Mercer, Middle Georgia, and the state of Georgia proud of your success. And with that, I'm going to ask Katie Powers if she'd like to come address the Senate.
First, thank you, Lieutenant Governor and Senator Kennedy and all of the senators who are here this morning. There's not much I can add to how great these students are. I think that we are the only law school in the nation to have won 4 national titles in a calendar year, and that's been this year, and that's due to their hard work, their dedication, and it exemplifies that being a lawyer from Georgia and a lawyer from Mercer is certainly the best in the country. Thank y'all so much for having us, and go Bears.
Senator, Mr. Pro Tem, don't go anywhere because you got the next one as well. So if we have our group here, some more special guests here that our Pro Tem has brought to the chamber today. Secretary reads the resolution, please.
Senate Resolution 196 by Senators Kennedy, Gooch, Butler, Robertson, Jones II, and others. A resolution commending John J. Sean Martin for his dedicated service to the Georgia State Senate. Whereas Mr. Martin was born in Austria to a military family and moved to the United States by ocean liner at the ripe old age of 2. Whereas in 1972, Mr. Martin graduated from Marist High School as captain of the Color Guard, whose responsibilities including presentation of the colors on a daily basis. And whereas Mr. Martin graduated from Georgia State University in 1976, whereas Mr. Martin began his service with the Georgia State Senate in the office of the Secretary of the Senate as a session assistant on the crew in 1978 and serving as reading clerk for the Senate. And whereas he earned his Doctor of Law degree in 1984 and engaged in the private practice of law and has a profoundly positive effect on many juvenile offenders that he represented and the judges before whom he appeared, as well as local officials as he worked in the juvenile justice system. And whereas he is known for his compassionate nature and willingness to listen, and whereas he is beloved and deeply admired by the staff of the Secretary of the Senate and by all who have come into contact with his calm and steady demeanor. And Mr. Martin, now retired, will be able to focus on his lumber mill and his hiking exploration as he leads the intrepid crew of pine walkers over the many backwoods and trails and rivers of the state of Georgia. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that a heartfelt thanks extended to Mr. Sean Martin with a hope that he enjoys the peace and balance that retirement can bring. We thank him from the bottom of our hearts for being such a special friend and thoughtful co-worker, and for each and every way he has influenced our lives throughout the years. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. An honor that is I hope well received, but also it is meaningful because Mr. Martin has done so much for this esteemed body, and he's always done it with a smile and an attitude of whatever it takes. And so I'm glad that we are honoring him today, and we'll call upon our pro tem from the 18th to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning again, colleagues. I'll be brief, but it is really my honor as pro tem to honor Sean Martin, who's standing behind me. He's the smiling face, he's the steady hand, he's the happy face that greeted us no matter for how long, no matter what we needed out of the Secretary of the Senate's office. He was always there to be nice, even if it were after hours or whatever the request was. And so he leaned over to me as we were standing next to each other, and he said, "I had no idea this was happening." And I said, "I know. That's what makes it so much fun." And so I want to thank our Secretary, Mr. David Cook, Secretary Cook, who may or may not have planted a few ruses to make sure that this was going to be a little bit of a surprise and an opportunity for us to recognize and honor Sean, our friend who has been here so long. I had a few details about his history and his past accomplishments, but those were largely covered in the resolution. But in closing, I'm honored to have the opportunity to thank Sean Martin for his service to the state of Georgia, to this Senate body, to each of us as members, and hope that he enjoys the peace and the balance that retirement brings to him in the days ahead. And Sean, would you like to say anything? Sure. We'd love to have you address us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Kennedy, Lieutenant Governor Jones. I appreciate the recognition this morning. The Secretary's office has been close to my heart since I was in my 20s, and I retired from the practice of law about 5 or 6 years ago, and the Secretary asked me if I would be interested in helping out in his office, and I said yes. And so I've come full circle now from working as a member of the crew to being the Deputy Secretary last year. And I thought I was just coming down here to fill in for somebody for a week, but I see that there was more involved in it than that. But it's been my pleasure and honor to serve the Senate. It's close to my heart. And I have the utmost respect for the members of this body, for the deliberations that take place here, and for the Secretary's office, who does so much to make the functioning of the Senate run smoothly. And it covers a huge gamut of tasks, as I'm sure you have some sense of. So thank you very much for the recognition. Thank you, Secretary Cook. And I will see you in the future, I'm sure. Thank you.
We also have our former Secretary of the Senate on the floor with a fresh haircut from the last time I saw him. So, Bob Ewing, let's give Bob a big round of applause. Are there any unanimous consents? Chair hearing none. Hold on. All right. I got it. You ready? Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Senator from the 15th, like to rise? The Dean of the Senate. This doesn't happen much here, folks, so we better listen.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like this opportunity to introduce you to some special guests against the wall over here. They are all CTA instructors of career technical and agriculture education, all junior ROTC instructors. They are Major Goss, Fayette County High School, senior Army instructor, Lieutenant Colonel London Groves High School, JROTC Savannah. Raise your hand over there. And Command Sergeant Major Baron Elder of Fulton County Junior ROTC. And finally, my good new friend, United States Marine Corps retired Sergeant Keith Allen of Bibb County School District. So let's give them a warm welcome, folks. Thank you for what you do. Thank you.
I recognize the senator from the 44th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I rise today to pay tribute to two Georgians who passed last week. Mrs. Mabel Brown Murphy of Jonesboro passed last week. She was the mother of the church, Andrews Chapel United Methodist Church. She was a lovely wife, mother, and grandmother, and simply a pillar of the community in Jonesboro. The second, Dr. Norman Thomas Sr., retired from the Atlanta Public Schools after 37 years of service. Dr. Thomas was the first African-American president of the Georgia PTA and the first man in the history of the National PTA to be elected as chairman of the State President's Conference. He has also received honorary life memberships from 15 other states. He has over 30 years of PTA experience, and during his tenure as state president, the Georgia PTA membership increased to over 300,000 members for the first time in its history. A former social studies teacher, Dr. Thomas retired from the Atlanta Public Schools in 2004 after more than 37 years of service. During the last 10 years, with the Atlanta Public Schools, he served as policy analyst, director of community outreach, parent involvement center, and the executive director of school services. Dr. Thomas is the author of Stress Management, a Family Affair, and is a stress management consultant. He has provided stress management guidance to such groups as the Georgia State Patrols, AT&T, National Health Service Corp., National Mortgage Bankers Association, the Georgia Department of Corrections, and the Metro Atlanta Law Enforcement Officers. Morehouse College Alumni Association, Omega Psi Phi, and he has received over 200 plaques from other expressions of recognition. He is married to Dr. Inez D. Thomas and is the father of 2 children, both principals in DeKalb County, Dr. Angela Thomas Bethea and Reverend Dr. Norman Thomas Jr., pastor of First Baptist Church of Gresham Road. Both of those funerals are being held today at the same time. But we want to make sure that we recognize the life and the legacy. Mr. President, at this time, I would ask for a moment of silence for these 2 Georgians.
Senator's request is that people stand for a moment of silence.
Amen. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 35th, I don't see her at her desk. There you are. You want to go to the well? Okay. Come on, Senator.
I'm not sure if I can get up there, but I'll pull this over.
Ma'am, let me grab that handheld mic for you.
Okay, that's reasonable. Well, you'll hold it.
Yeah, that'd work even better.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I am so honored today, on this great day in Georgia, to have so many wonderful citizens and groups that are here, but especially Douglas County Chamber of Commerce and business leaders. So they're up in the and okay. I definitely want Reverend Joshua Smith and Reverend Edwin Ford to please stand up, and their families. Stand up, please. Okay. I am truly honored to represent a portion of Douglas County, and also the senator from the 28th and the senator from the 30th represent portions of it too. And we are all honored from the 30th, the 30th, senator from the 30th. Okay, he's sitting over there. But the highest honor that we in the state of Georgia can give to a great citizen is going to be presented to both of you this morning. One to Reverend Joshua Smith of the Awen Mills Church in Douglas County, and the other to Reverend Edwin E. Ford of the Crossroads. We're so happy to have you here today. We're so happy to have you bless us and pray that the angels surround us every day and protect us as we do the business of Georgia. So we want to ask all of the members of the Senate to applaud you for receiving the Outstanding Georgia Citizen Award. May this outstanding citizen be afforded every courtesy as a goodwill ambassador from Georgia in his travels to other states, to nations beyond the borders of the United States of America, or wherever he may hereafter travel or reside. We thank you for your great service to Georgia. Both Reverend Joshua Smith and Reverend Edwin E. Ford. Everyone, please give a warm congratulations and welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for all you do for us, and thank you, Douglas County. I yield the well. And please come down to the door and get your award.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 6th, you wish to take a point of personal privilege?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a couple of recognitions here this morning. First, I'd like to recognize the Smyrna Youth Council for their visit to the Capitol. I believe they are here, so if y'all could stand up and say hello. These young people, let's give them a round of applause, give them a Senate welcome. These young people from Smyrna, Georgia, and they are part of the Youth Council. The Youth Council was started in 2018 and 2019, and they are in the 3rd year. They meet regularly to learn about city operations. It's a program that's done through the city of Smyrna, and they produce their own projects. This academic year, they are holding a clothing drive, and they partnered with a local elementary school to create Valentine's Day cards. And before the end of the year, they're going to use their Instagram page to host a virtual job fair. Now think about that. That is certainly for the young people, using their Instagram page to host a virtual job fair to highlight the city's job opportunities for current high school students and upcoming graduates. So thank you so much to the Youth Council for being here. And I'd also like to separately recognize over 10 service organizations who are here for the first Latino Day at the Capitol. These service organizations are serving the Latino community across the state, and they have organized the first ever Advocacy Day. So you will see them around representing their organizations and talking about the issues that are important to Latinos all across the state of Georgia. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. And I now recognize the senator from the 56th on a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in honor of Black History Month to recognize the senator from. He was born in New York City and raised in the General Grant Homes public housing complex on 125th Street in Harlem. He joined the United States Air Force and traveled the world to serve his country for over 25 years, becoming a Master Sergeant and receiving the Air Force Service Medal to recognize the remarkable and meritorious service to his country. The senator from the 33rd, we're not allowed to use names, but I'll say the word Doc, has shown incredible dedication and education, earning degrees from the Community College, United States Air Force, the State University of New York, the University of Central Oklahoma, Georgia State University, and the University of Georgia. He was first elected to the Georgia Senate in 2014 and has been recognized by numerous organizations in his county and the surrounding areas as a remarkable legislator. He also serves as a lifeguard. But more importantly, what we all know in this chamber is his incredible kindness and compassion. The first person to help another, someone to send a card or to make a call, someone who really embodies the collegiality that we all enjoy serving in the Georgia Senate. So to you, my friend and colleague, it is my honor to recognize you, our very own senator from the 33rd District.
Thank you, Senator. I now recognize the senator from the 48th on a point of personal privilege. Senator from the 48th, are you in the chamber? Okay, moving on. I now recognize the senator from the 10th on a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, presiding, and members of this body. I rise on a moment of Black history to celebrate Black history. And today I would like to tell you about a giant of a man. On August 30th, 1967, Thurgood Marshall became the first African-American U.S. Supreme Court Justice. He was appointed by President Lyndon B. Johnson. Justice Marshall was the grandson of an enslaved person, and he lived through some of the most trying times of race relations in America's history, which undoubtedly shaped his philosophy. Known for his earlier work in helping end legal separation through the 1954 landmark case Brown versus Board of Education, he once described his judicial approach by simply saying, "You do what you think is right and let the law catch up." Although Marshall contributed to many areas of the law, including tax and unions, he markedly is known for his contribution to the areas of civil rights and criminal procedure. Here are some of his most powerful quotes. Justice Marshall said, where you see wrong or inequality or injustice, speak out, because protect it and pass it on. He went on to say that none of us get where we are solely by pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. We got here because somebody, a parent, a teacher, an Ivy League crony, or a few nuns bent down and helped us pick up our boots. A man can make what he wants of himself if he truly believes that he must be ready for hard work and many heartbreaks. Justice Marshall went on to say, what is the quality? Went on to say that I wish I could say that racism and prejudice were only distant memories. We must dissent from the indifference. We must dissent from the apathy. We must dissent from the fear, the hatred, and the mistrust. We must dissent because America can do better, because America has no choice but to do better. And my favorite quote of all times of Justice Marshall, he said, in recognizing the humanity of our fellow beings, we pay ourselves the highest tribute. Justice Marshall's final resting place may be Arlington National Cemetery, but I believe that his memory should rest and reside in our hearts and our minds through all of eternity. Thank you.
I now recognize the senator from the 39th on a point of personal privilege. And following the senator from the 39th will be the senator from the 43rd.
Thank you and good morning, colleagues. I rise today to celebrate the wonderful mothers of Jack and Jill for Georgia Jack and Jill Day at the Capitol. Jack and Jill of America Incorporated was founded in January 24, 1938 in Philadelphia by Marion Stubb Thomas and 20 other African-American mothers who felt the need to empower our young people and give them the social, cultural, and educational resources and opportunities they deserve. Now, with 262 chapters nationwide, boasting more than 50,000 family members, Jack and Jill has been serving our children ever since. In 1946, they incorporated their national organization in Delaware, beginning the strive for a significant national organization. And in 1968, they incorporated their funding arm, the Jack and Jill of America Foundation in Illinois, beginning its philanthropic work. As a current mother in the Atlanta chapter of Jack and Jill since 2011, and with another 11 years to go before my youngest graduates high school, I am grateful for the program supporting leadership development, awareness of cultural heritage, and community service. As an organization, we've established multifaceted initiatives such as STEAM, the Healthy Living Initiative, centered on lifestyle improvements and healthy development, and various projects throughout the states with local, national partners. Please join me in recognizing our Regional Director, Darlene McGee Whittington, and our Regional Team President, who's paging with us today, Jasmine Stewart, and all the mothers and children of Jack and Jill who have joined us in the gallery today, and I'm going to ask them to stand now. Thank you for the outstanding work you are doing for our children and our communities. Thank you for being here today. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. I now recognize the senator from the 43rd on a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, I rise, colleagues, to recognize and celebrate the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, the sister organization to 100 Black Men. This organization was started as a way to advocate for issues concerning women, concerning Black women. And I quote, that no longer can Black women operate on the basis of reacting to crises and depending on crash programs to solve them. They know, as they have in the past, they must understand and direct present trends and become aware of the new economic and social realities that are emerging. So today we have several Georgia chapters here. I don't see any in the gallery, but if you see them around, please welcome the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. That concludes our points of personal privilege. You have a consent calendar of privilege resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Is there no objection to the adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? The senator from the 23rd District, you have a question?
I have a motion to withdraw and commit, Mr. President.
State your motion.
I ask unanimous consent that Senate Bill 231 be withdrawn from the Committee on State and Local Government Operations and be committed to the Committee on State and Local Government Operations General.
The senator has asked for unanimous consent that SB 231 be withdrawn from the Committee on State and Local Government Operations and be committed to the Committee on State and Local Government General. Is there objection? Secretary, read the captions.
Senate Bill 231 by Senator Burns of the 23rd and others. A bill to be entitled, an act to amend an act providing for the consolidation of Richmond County and the City of Augusta, approved March 27, 1995, as amended, so as to provide that the mayor shall be a full voting member of the commission, to provide for the effective dates of ordinances and resolutions, to provide for a referendum, effective dates, and automatic repeal. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Hearing no objection, SB 231 is... Senator from the 37th, you have a question. Hearing no objection, SB 231 is referred to the Committee on State and Local Government Operations General. Hold on. I recognize the Majority Leader for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that SB 121 be engrossed.
129.
I'm sorry, 129. You're correct.
Okay. All right. There's Majority Leader has moved that Senate Bill 129 be engrossed.
Read the caption. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 129 by Senator Williams of the 25th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to primaries and elections generally, so as to provide for time off for employees to advance vote, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
The majority leader has moved that Senate Bill 129 be engrossed. Is there objection? Objection. All right, so I will call on the majority leader to speak to the motion, and then the minority whip we'll get to speak to it as well. So 10 minutes apiece, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I won't need 10 minutes. As customary in the Senate, we always engross ethics bills and bills that come out of the Finance Committee, and we'd just like to continue that tradition in the Senate that we've experienced over the decades. So with that, I'll yield the well and ask for your consideration to engross this bill, SB 129.
You waive. Senator waves. So there's objection. Any senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. All those in favor of the motion, vote with the yay sign. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machines. On the motion of engrossment, the yeas are 33, the nays are 23, and the motion has prevailed. Heading to the rules calendar. First bill, SB 129. Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 129 by Senator Williams of the 25th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, relating to primaries and elections generally, so as to provide for time off for employees to advance vote, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Ethics recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Burns of the 23rd District Chairman. Mr. President, that completes the order.
I recognize the senator from the 25th to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bring before you a very simple bipartisan bill. This just gives the employees the right to ask for time off to go vote on election day. Right now, or in early voting, right now, an employee can ask the employer for time off on election day to go vote, but this allows them to do it during early voting, and it's up to the employer when to give the time off, but it would allow up to 2 hours, so the employer can pick a time when it's very beneficial to the workplace to allow the employee to go vote.
You do have a question, Senator. Senator from the 43rd, do you wish to ask a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the gentleman yield? Senator
Yes.
yield.
Yes, ma'am.
So you say this bill allows for the employee to ask for permission?
Yes, ma'am. What it does, it asks for permission to get off to go vote, and they can get off up to 2 hours, and that can be a mutual consent of the employer and employee, so that it's a mutual time that doesn't put the employer in position.
Does the senator further yield?
Ma'am?
Do you further yield?
Yes, ma'am.
So if the employer does not agree, then that leaves the employee in a very disadvantaged situation.
Well,
So-
he has to agree. This gives them, and just codifies it so that the employee can, in fact, go vote. And this allows the employer to reach a mutual time, and it can be that 2 hours in the morning, up to 2 hours that the person can go when the polls open, or it could be in the afternoon whenever the polls are getting ready to close, that the person could get off early to go vote. This is to make sure that they are given the opportunity to vote, and even though the employer has some say-so, this does give the employee right to go vote.
Last question, if you would yield.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it not true that I introduced a bill that will allow for Election Day to be a state holiday, which would allow for there to be no permission given, but that everyone would have the day off to vote?
I'm sorry, I can't understand the question.
So I introduced a bill. Is it not true that I introduced a bill that will make Election Day a state holiday that will allow for everyone to vote without permission?
I don't know.
It is true.
Okay.
Thank you.
If no other questions, Mr. President.
There's one more question, Senator. Senator from the 38th, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it not true that this has been with us ever since I've been in the Senate for 20 plus years? That we are allowed to go and vote for 2 hours. You, of course, need to consult your employer, but this is current law. I'm trying to understand.
It is current law.
Oh, this is early voting. Okay, not on the day of
It
voting.
is current law for on Election Day.
Okay.
But this covers the 21 days of early voting.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So it gives the employee more opportunity to be able to go vote. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so very much for that.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, I ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you, sir. I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machines. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 4. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Moving on, Senate Bill 99. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 99 by Senator Dole is all of the 27th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 31-647 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to exemptions from certificate of need requirements so as to provide an exemption for acute care hospitals established in rural counties that meet certain criteria. The Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Cowser, the 46th District Chairman. Regulated Industries and Utilities offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 99, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 31-647 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to exemptions from certificate of need requirements so as to provide an exemption for acute care hospitals established in rural counties that meet certain criteria. Senator Dole, is all of the 27th, offers the following amendment, Amendment 1, to amend Senate Bill 99 by inserting the line will after that on line 12, deleting provides and inserting provide on lines 13 and 16, deleting participates and inserting participate on line 14. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from the 27th to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I bring to you Senate Bill 99. For my Republican friends, I have good news. This is a bill that allows you to allow free markets to operate in the healthcare spectrum. And to my Democrat colleagues, I bring you good news. This is the opportunity to whittle away at some regulation that was envisioned by President Richard Nixon and signed into law by President Ford. So we have something here for both sides of the aisle today. This bill simply allows an additional exemption to certificate of need laws in Georgia to allow the construction of new acute care hospitals in rural counties as defined by code, which is essentially counties that have less than 50,000 people. This does not touch imaging, this does not touch ASCs, this does not touch every element of CON, but as we know, we have a need for innovation and access to expand into rural Georgia as it relates to health care. And this is a bill that will allow that to happen. CON is a regulatory mechanism that allows for controlling the volume of health care, and that is the exact opposite of what we need in rural Georgia. So we're going to allow new hospital construction in rural Georgia, and I'm going to speak just for a second to the amendment. The amendment, if you look at the original bill, the amendment really just cleans up some language around that was lifted actually from the HART language in current code. We were basically saying we would allow hospitals that currently do a number of things, provide services for Medicare and Medicaid, provide indigent care, et cetera. Well, a new hospital obviously cannot be currently providing that, so this amendment just changes it to that they will provide it, and then it strikes the 3-year average patient margin that's referenced in line 24 through 29, because obviously the hospital would not be able to endeavor what their patient profit margin would be relative to a standard deviation. So, Mr. President, this bill is relatively simple. Georgia Hospital Association is not opposed to this bill. We have been in active dialogue with them, have had good conversation getting to this point, and we'll continue that ongoing dialogue. I'm happy to answer any questions. If I do not have any, I'll yield the well.
You do have a question, Senator. Senator from the 41st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
I do.
With respect to your amendment, by making these changes in grammar, does it make a provision for only one singular new hospital to be created?
It's not the intent. Is there, I guess I can't ask you this, but I would hypothetically ask myself if I made an error in this amendment by doing that or not. I don't believe that I did.
Do you further yield?
I do.
I'm just not clear. If you look at line 11, it says "and," which is one, acute care hospital established on or after that will. So we've gone to singular language here. That's my read. I'm not a lawyer, but I just have that question for us.
In the interim, while other people are speaking, I'll follow up with counsel on that, but our goal is to have this apply to all of the rural counties in the state of Georgia.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Senator from the 42nd, you wish to rise?
I do. Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I do.
Can you, Senator, elaborate a little bit more on the deletion of lines 24 through 29?
Yes. So we recognized just a few days ago, to be perfectly honest with you about this, that the way that the bill was introduced and passed out of committee, essentially no hospital could qualify because a new hospital that's established at some point in the future would not be in existence such that it would be providing healthcare services to indigent patients, for example. Similarly, as it relates to lines 24 through 29, while this was lifted from the rural hospital healthcare tax credit portion of our law, the hospital would not be able to, in good faith, endeavor and state that it would intended to have something that was within a standard deviation with a 3-year average of organizations defined in that division. We think they probably will, because that's the nature of most rural hospitals, but we did not want to have that language preclude a hospital from being constructed.
Will the gentleman
Yes.
yield for a follow-up? Meaning
Absolutely.
that you're not certain that the patient mix will be more indigent? You
Well,
can't, it can't be guaranteed, is that what you're saying?
Correct. Well, it's the patient mix, which gets to margin, which is obviously, those two are tied together. We do not know, nor would the hospital be able to essentially certify, which is what this would essentially require them to do, is to say that they would be able to guarantee that would happen, because their earnings would be forward-looking. They haven't happened yet.
So the hospital you're envisioning would maybe not have been able to meet that provision, so it needed to come out?
Correct. I would point to you, as it relates to the indigent care, that line 16 still requires that, and line 14 and 15 still require the acceptance of both Medicare and Medicaid patients. So we think that it likely will still fall into that umbrella, if you will, because standard deviations are so broad, but to ensure that somebody that wanted to construct a hospital was not ensnared in some sort of regulatory burden and even get into the construction process by having to guarantee that, we're striking that language.
Thank you.
Senator from 36.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does Senator yield?
I do.
Thank you. Regarding SB 99, what's your understanding of why we have a certificate of need process in Georgia when hospitals are being considered for location and establishment?
When Gerald Ford signed the law in 1974, I believe the year might have been 1975, we had to in order to get access to federal money. In the decade that came after that 1975 to 1985 period, Congress looked at it and realized that certificate of need was not doing what they had hoped it would do, and they removed that requirement. And since then, a number of states have removed certificate of need altogether. California, for example, has completely removed certificate of need requirements, and you have other states like Florida who have done partial certificate of need repeals where they still require it for long-term care facilities, but did not require it for ambulatory surgical centers, acute care hospitals, et cetera. And then, of course, Georgia has been in a somewhat periodic stance of regularly reviewing these laws to ensure they best fit the needs of our citizens.
But isn't it true that the reason that certificate of need exists is because a hospital could, whether by intent or not, located too close to another hospital, there is then a hardship placed on the other hospital because patients are, and I use this term not in a pejorative way, but are poached. In other words, there's a patient base, and you put two hospitals too close together, and you've expended a lot of money and resources, and yet they're, if you will, fighting over serving the same patient base, and that in terms of the way the healthcare market works, it is a disadvantage, and that's why we've had the certificate of need in place for decades in Georgia. Isn't that the case? That's certainly my understanding.
Yes, certainly the original intent of certificate of need was to suppress the volume of health care being provided. And I think that what Congress realized after a decade of that being in place is that, in fact, supply and demand is a real thing and is a real law, and that as you suppress the supply of something, you limit access to it. So Congress saw fit to remove certificate of need as a nationwide mandate when it was tied to federal funding. And as I mentioned before, we've been in somewhat of a constant flux of change around these laws ever since.
Further question, if you'll yield?
I will.
Thank you. Lines 30 through 34. Essentially, as I understand that paragraph, is it true that you're bending the rules for this hospital established in accordance with this paragraph, that when they fall out of the description of a rural hospital, when they fail to meet the requirements of a rural hospital, they still are going to get to call themselves a rural hospital and get state benefits that come with that designation. Isn't that the impact of this paragraph?
No, the impact of this paragraph ultimately is that if you could, I mentioned the 50,000 threshold. If you had my county would be a perfect example. 30 years ago, my county would have qualified, and today my county is 250,000 people. And so what we don't want to have happen is have the rural hospitals of today, and as they will expand, Northside for Forsyth has constantly been under construction since the day they built it, constant expansions. We would not want to have the regulators step in and say that they somehow revoke their certificate of need in an instance just because a rural county happened to grow.
And so what you're doing really is skirting regulations that are in place in Georgia to do this hospital that's very, very close to the hospital in the next county, and that will adversely impact the bottom line of the hospital in the next county, and creating a special carve-out. Isn't that the case? I mean, this is just really anti-regulatory legislation that you're trying to keep the state out of a decision to put up a hospital and run it, and when it no longer meets the state definition of rural hospital, it still gets to call itself one and benefit from the state the law on rural hospitals, state regulations.
Senator, I certainly would not classify us passing a law under the constitutional powers that we've been given and changing law as, quote, skirting regulation. What we do in this building is review and change things constantly. And I certainly would not characterize any of the changes to law that you put forward as skirting regulation, nor do I classify this as skirting regulation. I view this as our constitutional authority and our responsibility, and something that we've worked very hard on to ensure that we can expand access into rural Georgia.
Do you yield
I
further?
do.
Thank you. Expand access into rural Georgia. But skirting, what I meant by skirting regulations, isn't it true, is that yes, we can come up here and change laws and pass laws. Is there wisdom behind it, or is there another motive? Is there adverse affects to the hospital in the next county, for example? I mean, I just don't think, isn't it true that you can walk away from that reality, that you will be adversely affecting a hospital that is in place a few miles away across a county line? Isn't it true? And that's the whole purpose of certificate of need. That's the entire thinking behind it. And it's in place in states across the country, and it's certainly been in place here in Georgia for as far back as the 80s. As far back as the 80s, for decades. And this bill changes the regulations under which this hospital would operate and allow it to skirt the current regulations and still retain a rural hospital designation when it exceeds steps outside the definition. Why are we doing all of this special privileged treatment for this?
Well, Senator, I know you've been around here long enough, as I have been around here long enough. You don't need to be around here very long to have heard the conversations around the problems that we have with access to health care in rural Georgia. And I wasn't in the California legislature when they got rid of certificate of need. I wasn't in the Florida legislature when they got rid of certificate of need. I wasn't in the Texas legislature when they got rid of certificate of need. But what we do know, and Matthew Mitchell in USA Today has cited a number of studies, and I'll just read this for you. I'm glad you brought up other states, because what Matthew Mitchell references is a number of studies done by the George Mason Center, George Mason University at the Mercatus Center, where he states in his article that, quote, controlling for other factors, researchers find that the average patient in a CON state has access to fewer hospitals, fewer hospice care facilities, fewer dialysis clinics, and fewer ambulatory surgical centers. There are fewer beds in these states and fewer medical imaging devices. Nor does CON distribute care where it is most lacking. The average rural patient has access to fewer rural hospitals and fewer rural ASCs in CON states and must travel further for care. In one study, researchers found that once a state eliminates CON, black and white disparities in the provision of some services disappear. So, Senator, you can stand behind this regulation if you'd like. I believe the studies, and if you have studies that you would like to cite that state otherwise, I'd certainly be open to hearing those. But the Mercatus Center really has been a preeminent group that has looked into this at George Mason University, and they've done a number of studies. They've looked at Georgia, as a matter of fact, and they said that if CON were to be repealed in Georgia, that we would go from 61 rural hospitals to 68 rural hospitals. So across the board, what the data is telling us from the other states that have done this is that this is something that is a prudent step to expand access to care.
And final question, if you'll yield.
I do.
Isn't it true that the statewide organization of community hospitals opposes this bill and has come out against it and testified against it?
Are you referencing, I guess I can't ask you a question, so I will simply state that the Georgia Hospital Association has taken a position that they are not opposed to this legislation. I mentioned that earlier. And if you're referencing a different group, I'd give you the ability to clarify that.
Yes, I am referencing the statewide group of community hospitals.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator from the 31st. You wave. Senator from the 35th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman, will you yield?
I do, to my good friend.
Thank you.
And chair lady.
Thank you. I know that in lieu of so many urban hospitals that are closing, as well as rural hospitals, to increase the access of need, did you consider making this CON for areas that have closed? Because I know that there's an attempt to put hospitals to replace the ones that have closed in Atlanta and in Fulton County and Clayton County, East Point, I think, but not in those same buildings, but to build new hospitals. It's very difficult to get a CON, and did you consider that in the study that you say you had done?
As far as this legislation goes, Senator, I really had a laser focus on rural health care. I know some other conversations have been initiated by other members of this body as it relates to statewide efforts, and I'll let them speak to their own efforts and their own bills. But to your point, we have a statewide issue, absolutely, and I know that in your district and the surrounding areas, we've seen hospitals close, and certainly we need to do everything we can to have the beds that we need. I would point out that one of the first things that most states did at the start of the pandemic was suspend certificate of need laws because we recognized that we needed beds.
Thank you.
You have no further questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
The senator from the 46th, you wish to rise to speak on this measure?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, this bill came through the Regulated Industries Committee, so I wanted to just sort of explain a little bit where it came from and the differences that may be confusing some of you. There were two separate bills that dealt with the CON issue that came through the Regulated Industries Committee. One of them was Senate Bill 162, which was a much broader elimination of CON requirements in different areas of the state, wasn't limited to rural areas, and not just to acute care hospitals. This bill, Senate Bill 99, is more like a rifle shot, very narrowly focused on the problem that we have dealt with in this chamber for the last decade: adequate medical services for rural areas of our state. And that's all this does. It addresses acute care hospitals in those rural areas, and they're specifically directed to providing services for poor people, indigent people, Medicaid, Medicare covered patients. You will notice when you look here on line 11 that it says 30A. This is the 30th exception to certificate of need requirements. It's under the area of the certificate of need law that carves out exceptions. Areas where people, healthcare service providers, do not have to go through this cumbersome, archaic, slow, tedious process of getting permission to provide health care services. That's all this does, is eliminate that need to go ask the State Department of Community Health May I provide services to poor people in rural Georgia? This eliminates that need. It is addressed 4 categories. It has to be a new facility. It's to get more hospitals in these rural areas. We've been hearing for the last decade that hospitals are closing down in rural Georgia. They can't make enough money or not willing to provide their services there. This is to encourage them to get new ones. It's for acute care that will handle inpatient care, surgery procedures, handle acute injuries and illnesses, and it's to serve poor people. You must take Medicaid and Medicare patients. You must provide services to indigent patients. In fact, at least 10% of your income must come from charity care and indigent care. I don't see how anybody that cares about rural health care in Georgia can vote no. This is how you enable it and bring people. You don't have to worry about profitable hospitals coming, swooping in and putting local hospitals under. This isn't for profit. This is indigent care, Medicaid patients, elderly care, Medicare patients. If a hospital wants to come in and provide those services, knowing at least 10% of it is not even going to be compensated, I say bring it on. So I strongly urge the favorable consideration of Senate Bill 99. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to rise to speak for or against the measure? Chair hearing none. Previous. We got to look at the amendment, don't we? I almost jumped ahead of us there. On the adoption of Amendment 1. Hold on, we got a late coming amendment here. All right, we've got another amendment authored by the senator, authored by the senator who authored the bill. Secretary, read the caption for Amendment 2.
Senator Dolezal, the 27th, offers the following amendment to amend committee substitute to Senate Bill 99 by striking the word accepts in line 14 and replaces it with will accept. That completes the order.
I recognize the senator from 27th. You waive? Would you like to close debate then, Senator? You good? All right. The question is on the adoption of so without objection and without anyone else wanting to speak for or against the bill, the previous question is ordered. Now we need to bring up the amendments here. On Amendment 2, authored by the senator who authored the bill, you don't have it on your face. Excuse me, we'll do Amendment 1 first since everybody hadn't gotten the Amendment 2. I think Amendment 2 is just clarifying some language from Amendment 1. But on Amendment 1, from the author from the 27th, is there objection to Amendment 1? We got objection by Senator from the 38th. Would you like to speak to the objection, Senator? Oh, I'm sorry. We got 5 people. You want on the board? Yeas and nays? All right. On Amendment 1, all those in favor of Amendment 1 vote by saying yea. All those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. Do what now? On the adoption amendment, the yeas are 34, the nays are 21, and Amendment 1 is adopted. On Amendment number 2, which I think is just correcting some wording in Amendment 1, is there objection to Amendment 2? You don't have Amendment 2. Can we put it up on the screen? Well, stand by. We're getting them out. This is why committee work means a lot, you know. I know you got to get up and talk, you know. You got to get in the way. Maybe you're talking about the leaf blowers. That looks like a good leaf blowing suit right there. Huh? I know it's a good one to talk about. Get up there and talk about the folks not being able to sleep with those leaf blowers. You know? All right, now that we got the amendment distributed, are there objections to Amendment 2 authored by the senator from the 27th? Hearing no objections, the Amendment 2 is adopted. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Hearing none, the committee substitute as amended is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 42 and the nays are 13. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. So the pro tem has let me know we just have a few bills left here, and we should be, unless the leaf blower bill draws a lot of fire. I don't ever know, but we should be finished here pretty quickly. But the pro tem has let me know that he has lunch provided for the body here, and and I've got to step away to get in a conference with a couple, and I'm going to ask the pro tem to come here and preside. But he does have lunch available, and we hopefully we'll see everyone at lunch, either before or after we finish the rest of the rules calendar here. But right now, we'll move on to Senate Bill 116. Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 116 by Senator Watson of the 1st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 3637-6 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, relating to disposition of municipal property generally, so as to revise provisions relative to the maximum term of certain leases or contracts for the use, operation, or management of real or personal property owned by a municipality for recreational facilities. The Senate Committee on Slogo General recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator again of the 47th District Chairman. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 1st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 116 does a very simple thing. It allows municipalities in the state of Georgia to go, instead of 5 years with renewal, basically 10 years, to a 20-year contract. And we narrowly define this to recreational facilities and arenas. And I'll give you the specifics, is that in the city of Savannah, which has Grayson Stadium, and if I recall correctly, it was built in about 1915, and it has been improved, but it could do for some more improvement. So the Savannah Bananas and its owners would like to improve it, but they would like longer lease. According to the Savannah Bananas, they'd like 1,000 years, but we've settled on 20 years. And also the arena in Savannah, which is built with local money, again, is the folks who manage the Ghost Pirates would also like to leasehold or improve the facility, and would like assurances that their return on investment would be sustained. So again, a 20-year ability to do a contract with the city. So that's basically it, changing it to allow 20 years. Mr. President, I would ask for your favorable consideration. I'm happy to answer questions if there are any.
Senator, you do have questions. The chair recognizes the senator from the 26th.
Senator, yeah.
I do.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, isn't it true that all facilities are basically contract out at approximately 5 years, and those who want to do the investment do not feel that 5 years will give them an actual good return on the investment of their money going into those facilities?
Yes, sir. The senator knows as he speaks.
Senator, you have no other questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair hears none. Is there an objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to the agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. Mr. Secretary, please unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 2, and this bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed.
All right, moving on down the rules calendar. Mr. Secretary, read the caption for SB 145.
Senate Bill 145 by Senator Still of the 48th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 60 of Title 36 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to general provisions applicable to counties and municipal corporations so as to prohibit local regulations that create differing standards for or distinguish gasoline-powered leaf blowers from similar equipment. The Senate Committee on Slogo General recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Again of the 47th District Chairman. Senator Still of the 48th and others offers the following amendment, Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 145 by inserting after line 36E, this code section shall stand repealed as of June 30th, 2031. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the senator from the 48th to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. At a time and place when our great state is weighing heavy subjects such as Buckhead City, healthcare reform, gambling, schools, in China, the fate of the free world hangs in the balance with the Landscape Equipment and Agricultural Fairness Act, better known as the LEAF Act. This bill has been surrounded with controversy and misunderstanding, ranging from decibels to horsepower to run times to explosive lithium-ion batteries. One consistent misunderstanding is the difference between electric and gas-powered. Aside from true landscape professionals, it can be hard to tell the difference between the various type of devil's hair dryers on the market today. Most critics assume that blowers made today remain unchanged and continue to quote data that is 10 plus years old. Based on the many emails I've received about this over the past several weeks, one would think that folks were living in hurricane force winds on a daily basis. I offer that this might be a slight exaggeration by some. The reality is that gas-powered blowers made today are vastly different. One example is the bestseller Stihl, S-T-I-H-L, not to be confused with Still, S-T-I-L-L, which features a powerful low-emission engine and specifically designed muffler that it operates at a comparatively quiet 65 decibels. According to the CDC, not facts made up by anybody else, but truly from our very own CDC, these are a few decibel ratings from a few other everyday sounds that we hear. Refrigerators, 40 decibels. Washing machines and dishwashers, 50 to 70 decibels. City traffic while you're in your car, 80 decibels. Older model gas leaf blowers, 70 to 75, but the newer ones now are in the 60s. Motorcycles, 95 decibels. A car horn at 16 feet, 100 decibels. The sound inside the stadium when the Georgia Bulldogs won their national championship was over 110 decibels. Police and fire sirens, 120. What I'm saying is a lot of folks can't tell the difference between electric and gas-powered blowers by the sound. However, if you've used both types of blowers, you would know that the average runtime of an electric blower is a mere 18 minutes. Can't move a lot of leaves with that, compared to over an hour with a gas unit. Fortunately, the industry is evolving. While electric units can't meet demand yet, manufacturers are making great strides every year. Until they do, this bill is designed to protect the use of gas units until the electric technology catches up. So with that, let me tell you what this bill does not do. It does not prevent campuses, such as schools, corporate centers, hospitals, from banning gas blowers. It does not prevent HOA neighborhoods from banning the units. It does not address noise or decibel ratings. What this bill does do, it prevents entire cities and counties from banning gas-powered units because the technology between gas and electric are not equal. This bill does have, with the help of my friend from the 42nd, Senator Parent. It does have, as of now, on your desk, a sunset bill, a sunset clause to make sure that we know that we are putting an end to gas to give it time to catch up with electric. One day, electric blowers will meet the needs of both professionals and civilians, and two-cycle gas engine blowers will be a thing of the past. To my colleagues concerned about whether or not this bill preempts local control, I offer that this bill exactly gives local control to each individual homeowner to decide what they're going to do in their own yard. Until then, I ask your support of SB 145 so we can continue to keep Georgia beautiful. Unless there are any questions, I yield the well, Mr. President.
Oh, Senator, you have questions. The winds have changed. They are blowing, but you have questions. Senator from the 28th is recognized by the chair, the distinguished rules chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
I do.
Senator, I noticed you're up there talking a long time about this bill. Are you filibustering to avoid these questions?
No, sir. I'm merely long-winded in the sake and the name of blowing leaves.
And do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
And you referenced devil's hair dryer. Did the devil's hair dryer blow all the hair off your head?
That is merely a point of genetics and age, sir.
Which you have neither. So, Senator, I want to go back to the decibels.
Yes, sir.
Can you walk me through? You said a motorcycle was how many decibels?
According to the CDC, a motorcycle produces approximately 95 decibels.
95. And you said can you repeat what a decibel is for these gasoline-powered leaf blowers?
The older model gas leaf blowers are 70 to 75. The new ones being produced today are in the 60s. Electric could be anywhere between 40 and 60.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 31st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, you yield?
I do.
Do you own a gas-powered blower or an electric blower?
For my personal use, I have an electric. For business, I use a gas.
It's not very convincing, Senator. Does our great former colleague, who's the Commissioner of Agriculture, support this legislation?
He does, sir.
Does he? Does he own a gas-powered or an electric blower?
I did not ask him, sir.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
I do, sir.
For a series of questions?
I can't wait.
Senator, I realize that this is your first bill and you're new to the Senate, but are you familiar with the Senate rules?
Yes, sir.
Have you read them cover to cover?
I have, sir.
Senator, do you know that you're not supposed to mention another senator's name while in the well? Do you want to apologize, Senator of the 42nd, right now?
I apologize profusely to the senator from the 42nd.
Senator, I was talking to my good friend, the senator of the 14th here, and he actually has a leaf sucker. So are you discriminating against leaf blowers versus his leaf sucker? Can you explain yourself?
Senator, I'd like to say that this bill focuses on merely blowing.
Thank you for that clarification. One more question. You said you had a gas-powered leaf blower at your point of business. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever have to start that up yourself?
Yes, sir.
Did you have to pull on it?
Quite a few times.
So are you saying it just took one big jerk to get it started?
The gentleman knows of which he speaks.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 26th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yale.
Yes, sir.
Senator, I kind of halfway understand what you're doing because corporations are about making money. But have you thought about when you get rid of these gas power instruments that the small engine repair guy is finna be out of business? And have you decided whether or not you're going to try to find some appropriation so they can be retooled so that they can make a livelihood?
That's an excellent question, sir. I'm unaware of the exact number of two-cycle engine repair shops around the state of Georgia, but I think that that would be an excellent thing to bring to our friends at TCSG.
Senator, you got it.
Thank you, sir.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 24th.
Senator, do you yield for a couple of questions?
Yes, sir.
Senator, you say you own some blowers?
I do, sir.
Now, you are considered a politician, right?
Yes, sir.
A politician's blower, how much hot air can be blown through that thing?
There's truly no limit to the amount of hot air that can go through a leaf blower, sir.
Well, you know, as a senator on the floor, it's probably be about a good time for you to yield the well if you wanted to, so we can vote for the bill.
Thank you, sir.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
Absolutely.
Senator, when you were reading those rules from cover to cover, you are familiar also with the rule against sharing private conversations with other members on the floor, correct?
I am, sir.
And you would agree with me that the only way that the senator from the 56 evaded violating that rule is because he referred to a conversation that never happened. You would agree with that, correct, Senator?
That is entirely possible, sir.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Gill.
I do, sir.
Can you explain to me why there is a discriminatory basis for diesel gas blowers? These diesel leaf blowers. Can you explain why you discriminated and did not include them in this bill? Because diesel is used in many, many leaf blowers, and why do we leave them out?
To my understanding, sir, diesel leaf blowers tend to not be the backpack version. They tend to be the push style, and they tend to be quite a bit heavier. So this is really dealing with the more portable units.
We're willing to, it has to be on something on your back in order for it to work. Is that
Yes,
what
sir.
I understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okie doke. I like the push type. I hate to discriminate against those, but appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your question.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd.
Do you yield, Senator?
I do, sir.
Do you know why the gardener quit his job?
No, sir, I do not.
His salary wasn't high enough.
Okay, Senator. You have other questions, Senator, but the combination of the questions you've answered and your 45-minute presentation of the bill to start with, we're about to bump up on our time limit. So with that, you have no other questions, Senator.
President, I wish to yield the well. Thank you.
Senators yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair hears none. Excuse me. Senator from the 42nd, do you wish to? Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'll be brief because for his first bill, the senator from the 48th has been so accommodating and been wonderful to work with to address some of the concerns that my constituents have about this particular piece of legislation. So first of all, I wanted to thank him and then just tell you all a couple reasons why it is actually pretty important to put in the sunset, which is Amendment 1, which will sunset this bill in 2031. And that is because a couple reasons. Gas-powered leaf blowers are pretty toxic in terms of their pollution, as well as the noise they emit. And this bill usurps local control, which matters more to those of us who represent older, denser communities, because the sort of less desirable impacts of gas-powered leaf blowers are stronger the more dense your community is. There was talk about decibel levels of washing machines and whatnot, but those of you who live in a neighborhood probably can attest that when three guys show up next door with their blow and go and you're on a Zoom call, you can't hear a thing. So it's definitely much larger than louder than a washing machine. And in terms of the air pollution, the air pollution generated in these two-stroke engines is 23 times more carbon monoxide and 300 times more non-methane hydrocarbons than a Ford F-150 truck. And in fact, the emissions of 1 hour of a gas leaf blower are the same as a Toyota Camry driving from Los Angeles to Denver. So let's keep in mind that there are harmful air impacts and harmful noise impacts, which, we got some emails about autistic children, babies napping, and people who just want to use their patio and kind of can't when these things are going. So I'm just really, again, grateful to the Senator from the 48th for recognizing that the technology is coming a long way quickly, where just like with electric cars, the electric models, the battery life is increasing rapidly. The strength is increasing rapidly, and so I think we have a win-win with the sunset. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and if not, I will yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair hears none. Is there an objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Pursuant to the Senate rule, the senator from the 48th has a right to close the debate. He waives. So the question is on the adoption of amendment number 1 by the senator from the 48th. Is there objection to the adoption of amendment number 1? The chair hears none. Amendment 1 is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill as amended. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. And the secretary, please unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 37, the nays are 16, and this bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Well done, Senator. Well done. Moving on down the rules calendar, Mr. Secretary, we'll move to SB 159. Please read the caption.
Senate Bill 159 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 5 of Title 42 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions regarding correctional institutions of state and counties so as to prohibit wireless communications and standalone electronic devices behind guard lines. The Senate Committee on Public Safety recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectively submitted, Senator Albers of the 56th District Chairman.
Thank you, sorry.
The Senate Public Safety Committee meeting. The Senate Public Safety Committee offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 159, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 5 of Title 42 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions regarding correctional institutions of states and counties so as to prohibit wireless communications and standalone electronic devices behind guard lines. Senator McLaurin of the 14th offers the following amendment, Amendment 1, to amend Senate Bill 159 by inserting after line 44, every state and county correctional institution shall provide reasonable access to phone and other telecommunications for inmates at no cost to inmates or their families, provided that nothing in this code section shall prohibit. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the senator from the 29th to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this bill is very straightforward. Currently, probably the biggest threat in our county jails and in our correctional institutions here in the state of Georgia are the abilities of some of the most dangerous individuals being held there able to communicate outside and continue running their criminal enterprises. And what we have seen over the past few years is this ability has led to assassinations, murders, whatever you want to call them, of Georgia citizens who are completely innocent and of correctional officers, especially those correctional officers who take a strong stand against allowing contraband of any kind into our prisons, correction facilities, or county jails. A prime example of that is the murder of a Mr. Kicklighter, 88-year-old gentleman who lived down in South Georgia. His next-door neighbor, who happened to be a correctional officer with the Georgia Department of Corrections, was a man of character who was approached as many times as other correctional officers, offered money, favors, and other things in order to look the other way so that contraband could be brought into the correctional institution. This gentleman refused to submit to these individuals that were attempting to offer graft or some other type of bribe to get him to violate Georgia law. He did not allow his character to be assaulted by these convicted felons. So in order to get retaliation on this individual, a gang known as YSL used cell phones from inside the prison and set up the assassination of this correctional officer. So on the night in question, 3 individuals drove to what they believed was the house of the correctional officer. They knocked on the door. The gentleman opened the door, and he was immediately assassinated, absorbing several gunshots to the chest, and fell dead on the floor. The problem was the correctional officer lived next door. They killed an innocent Georgia citizen on a contract issued via a wireless device from inside of a state prison. This type of behavior doesn't just occur inside of state prisons. It also occurs in our county correctional camps and also in our county jails, where individuals held there continue to attempt to run their criminal enterprises while being incarcerated, either convicted or awaiting trial. And during this time, they work overtime to try to recruit correctional officers and jailers into their criminal activity by offering these underpaid and overworked individuals money and other things of value, hopefully in order to encouraging them to come over to the other side. What this legislation does is it makes it for anybody that wants to do that, a correctional officer or a citizen who wants to bring a wireless device across the guard line with the intent of passing it on to an inmate or someone inside. This includes correctional officers. It makes it, if you'll look in around line 40, where it states, any person who violates subsection B of this code section and any correctional officer who violates subsection C of this code section shall be guilty of a felony, and upon conviction thereof shall be punished by imprisonment of a minimum term of imprisonment of 10 years, which may be suspended, stayed, probated, deferred, or withheld by the sentencing court. We feel this is the best path forward. And briefly, to the amendment that's being offered, and I would like to say that one of these correctional officers in the Department of Corrections who was terminated for assisting in the contraband scheme After that correctional officer was terminated, within a couple of weeks, a hit was put out on them, and they were also murdered by the same group via cell phone. But there's an amendment being offered from my friend from the 14th, and while I appreciate his intent, this is not the vehicle for that. What he's attempting to do is, and I appreciate his energy and his awareness of how the systems are run to a certain degree. There's a commingling within the Department of Corrections of the inmate phones that are owned by the Georgia Department of Corrections, along with iPad systems that allow the inmates to perform their commissary purchases and other things, and then also some of the educational aspects tied in to the cell phone and the commissary part as a unified contract, a lot of times that are handled through RFPs. I'd be more than happy offline to have a conversation with this senator and the commissioner with the Georgia Department of Corrections to try to see if there was some way we could come to some understanding on what the senator from the 14th is trying to accomplish. But this bill is not that vehicle. This bill deals with the safety not only of those individuals outside of the jails and prisons, but also those individuals being held inside of the jails and prisons. Because I will tell you, those prisoners and those detainees that have access to cell phones, they have access to power inside of those jails and prisons, and they use and they abuse that power. So I would humbly ask each senator to support this legislation and vote no on the amendment, but yes on the legislation. Thank you, Mr. President. If there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
Senator, you do have questions. The chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd.
Does the senator yield?
I do yield for my well-dressed friend from the 2nd.
Thank you to the senator from the 29th. I have a question. As it relates to line 42, it says, upon conviction thereof shall be punished by imprisonment for a minimum term of imprisonment of 10 years. However, in the rest of the line, it says, which may be suspended, stayed, probated, deferred, or withheld by the sentencing court. The reason I ask this question, Senator, is why is there a preferential treatment for a judge to give a deferred sentence in this case, however, not in many of the other bills that we've heard before this body?
There are certain occupations within this state and throughout our country that require a certain level of character. And if someone holding one of those jobs within that, they need to be labeled as what they are so that they can continue to doing the job. Many correctional officers in the state of Georgia carry a post-certification. And if you're a convicted felon, you cannot have a post-certification. I have stood in front of the post committee many times and seen where individuals who have been terminated for criminal activity, once that probation, parole, or whatever is over, unimaginably they come back up and try to get their post-certification back. Georgia leads the nation in the #1 state to revoke certification of law enforcement officers and correctional officers. And I feel that those individuals that play a role in bringing contraband into the jail, especially those that took the oath that I took, I think that they need to have a label placed on them for as long as possible, and I think 10 years is fair enough.
Does the senator further yield?
I do.
Senator, my question is, it says that their sentence may be suspended, stayed, probated, or deferred, or withheld by the sentencing court. And if we do believe that these folks should be held accountable to the fullest letter of the law, then they should serve the 10-year sentence without having the option of it being suspended, stayed, probated, deferred, or withheld by the sentencing court. Don't you agree?
Senator from the 2nd, and I agree. I hope no judge suspends, stays, probates, defers, or withholds from the sentencing court, but I'm excited to know that they'll be labeled as a convicted felon.
Last question, does the senator further yield?
I do.
So for young people, when I talked about a Superior Court judge on a previous bill having an opportunity to look at one of the 5, however, they get a mandatory 5 without any recommendations from the sentencing court. In this bill, those who violate public trust do have that leeway to have their sentence suspended, stayed, probated, deferred, or withheld by the sentencing court. Is that not true?
I assume the gentleman knows of which he speaks. I'm not familiar with exactly which piece of legislation you're discussing, but I do appreciate your questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 26th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I certainly do, sir.
Senator, I understand what you're trying to do, but what are you going to do about unintended consequences? The guard line is when you cross the line to go in the parking lot. So if you got somebody that's coming to a new prison, using GPS on their phone and everything, once they get in the parking lot, they've crossed the guard line. So what are we going to do about that?
There's this, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, Senator, there's something called intent. And our criminal justice system is one of the strongest foundations of the criminal justice system. The responsibility would be on the state to prove that the individual's intent was to bring that contraband inside the guard line and commit an illegal act with that wireless device. I've gone to state prisons to visit without remembering to move a knife from my pocket. And when I went through security, they gave me the opportunity to take that weapon back to my vehicle and secure it, or even take it off campus and secure it there. So I think if the intent of the individual is not to cause harm, I think the criminal justice system protects those in that area.
Senator further.
Yes, sir, I do.
That would be upon one's judgment, and judgment sometimes will be different from one person to the other. What I'm concerned about is you cross the guard line once you're in the parking lot. You fool around and you say your mother, grandmother trying to see you, and when they get there, they got the cell phone in the pocketbook, and not thinking about contraband. It's just how they got there. They use that, and I don't want somebody to be taken for granted and end up having to go pay a lawyer and everything that they didn't intend to use their phone as contraband or take it in to give it to somebody.
Yes, sir. And the policies of the Department of Corrections is to give individuals the opportunity when contraband is discovered on them as they're coming to visit and do other things, gives them the opportunity to take that item back and secure it. And also most correctional officers that currently bring in lunch boxes or backpacks or things like that, the Georgia Department of Corrections requires that they carry a clear one. These are individuals that purposely stash this technology away in an attempt to bring it inside for nefarious reasons. I appreciate your questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Absolutely, sir.
Senator, isn't it true that during a visit by the State Institution Property Committee to the various prisons in the state of Georgia on an annual visit, we learned about the various problems experienced by the wardens in those prisons, and number one, above weapons and other issues, was the advent of cell phones into the prisons and the chaos it can cause. Number two, if the senator further yield,
absolutely,
that,
to the dean of the
what
Senate.
happened is that people use drones to fly them over the walls. So it's a great problem for the people trying to enforce the prison environment. Is that true?
The senator knows of which he speaks. Absolutely, Senator. And I heard a senator come up and talk about the importance of a ride-along at the beginning of this session and how it would allow individuals within this body to understand what goes on in crime suppression and these other things. What I would encourage, if senators really want to see that law enforcement officer, that man, that woman, who really has the pressure on them and really understands the dangers of the job, that do not carry a firearm on their side, that do not carry a taser, and in many cases do not carry handcuffs on their side, I would encourage everybody in this chamber to go work a shift at one of our prisons, one of our correctional facilities, and understand the absolute danger, and to introduce something that increases that danger. I think it is our responsibility not only to protect the men and women that do the job, but also to punish those people from that same group who may attempt to thwart their brothers and sisters' safety by bringing that device onto the institution.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. I appreciate your question.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 41st for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
I do.
Senator, is it true that the guard line begins at the entrance of a facility?
The guard line begins what many would refer to, the legal term as curtilage, which could be just beyond the fences. And the purpose of that is in order to keep as many individuals as possible away from coming up and throwing contraband over the fence. So the guard line, they're signs that designate the guard line. Yes, ma'am.
So, Senator, is it further true, therefore, that if I drive into the parking lot to visit someone, that by doing so, my driving in is making me cross the guard lines because our current code requires that the guard lines be established at the entrances of our facilities?
Yes, ma'am. And if your intent is to bring a cell phone onto that site in order to get it illegally to someone being held incarcerated in that facility, then you would be in violation of this law.
Do you further yield?
Yes, ma'am.
So you've referred to intent. Is there anything in your bill that says that one has to have intention to distribute or to give that cell phone away? Is there anything in this bill that actually speaks to intent?
No, ma'am. That's intent is actually it's a responsibility of the law enforcement officer to begin with to prove intent, and then in the indictment it would be the responsibility of the prosecutor, and then the judge would have to ascertain if there was intent, or the jury to intent. But I think that the questions that are being asked about bringing it across that do not take intent into consideration are missing the point of the legislation. There's much legislation passed out of here that the word intent is not placed in there, because that is a foregone conclusion in all criminal law.
Do you further yield?
Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to be clear that if I drive up on the property and I have a cell phone in my car, I have Apple Watch on my wrist, that by the process of simply driving onto the property, if this were to become a law, I would have to defend myself as to whether or not I was committing a felony, because I would have to have a lawyer prove intent on my behalf that I did not intend to distribute that. Is that what's happening with this bill?
That is absolutely not what's happening in this bill.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your question.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just wondering, Senator Yell?
I do.
I was just asking on line 38 and 39, where it says any person other than a correctional officer violates subsection C is guilty of a felony. What is that sentence range?
Name those sentences again, sir.
38 and 39.
Any person other than a correctional officer who violates subsection of this code section?
Right.
You say you're asking what any person ranges would be?
How long would the sentence be? Because it says you're guilty of a felony, but what would that sentence range?
If you go down to 40, and it says any person who violates subsection B, then it goes into the last section, which identifies the sentence.
Thank you, Senator. But that actually is for subsection B. We're creating a new subsection C.
The intention of the bill, the way it was written, is that any individual who brings the property across the guard line would be subject to the sentence as mentioned on lines 43 and 44.
And so you're saying that a person who, line 38 and 39 says it should be guilty of a felony, that is going to be the minimum term of imprisonment of 10 years?
It's the minimum term that they could be in prison for, but that gives the options as discussed in committee, which may be suspended, stayed, probated, deferred, or withheld by the sentencing court. Yes, sir. Because one of the issues where you jump down to line 34 and it said it shall be unlawful for any person, that covers not only the employees there, not only the visitors there, but also contractors and others that may be on site.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate your wisdom.
Senator, you have no further questions.
Thank you. I would ask everyone to please understand the importance of this legislation. And again, I'd be more than happy to speak to the senator from the 14th offline on the amendment, but I think the amendment is not conducive to this legislation. I ask that you support the legislation and oppose the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. The chair now recognizes the senator from the 52nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief, but 10 years ago, my first year in the Senate, a president in my facility, in my district, though now it's in the senator from the 53rd district, one of America's, most bad prisons, been on the show and everything, had a lot of issues. I spent a lot of time working with it. In that case, also, one of those prisoners was able to get hold of a shank, and because of their communications with gang members at the prison in Jackson, was able to get off the bus and immediately stab to death a rival gang member, all because of the cell phone communications. We reconfigured the prison. The toilets are different material. The beds are. The light switches now are just, you put a finger through there so they can't get a light switch. Many things we had to do to make it, and I think it's probably better now, but it's still not a great place. But the frustrating part then, the frustrating part now, is that the federal government and the Federal Trade Commission would not allow us to jam the signals. Now, federal prisons can be jammed legally, but not state prisons. So that's why we have to do something like this, because of the federal government not allowing us. Nobody up there will do anything about this issue. There's no reason to let them have phones that aren't jammed that go between our prisons. But federal law prevents that. That's why we're here doing what we have to do right now. I would urge everyone, I brought this up in the appropriations budget meetings first of the year and have brought it up before, but I'd urge everyone to try to work with your federal legislatures to stop this ridiculous practice. Yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. The senator has yielded the well. The chair recognizes the senator from the 14th to speak to his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, colleagues. With respect to the senator from the 29th and his intentions, I will tell you as a practicing attorney who has litigated both civil and criminal cases that require a prosecutor to prove elements beyond a reasonable doubt, that there is no intent provision in the elements of this new crime. Full stop, there is no intent provision. I will read it to you. It says, "It shall be unlawful for any person to come inside the guard lines established at any state or county correctional institution with a wireless telecommunications device or a standalone electronic device without the knowledge or consent of the warden, superintendent, or his or her designated representative." All that makes unlawful is just coming inside the guard line with the device without the knowledge of the warden. That's all the elements that this new crime has. With experience, I can tell you that if the bill functioned the way that the senator said it did, there would be language in front of the verb. It would say knowingly or intentionally, or sometimes words like willfully, but it characterizes the action taken by the person charged with the crime. So it would say something like, "It shall be unlawful for any person to knowingly or intentionally come inside the guard lines with a wireless telecommunications device," let alone this bit about intention to distribute to somebody inside. That's nowhere in this bill. Just full stop, it's not in the bill. So that might be a policy aim that is laudable, but there's one person, it seems like, unless you kill the bill now, who will be able to fix this, and that is Chairman Tyler Paul Smith of the Georgia House of Representatives when this bill gets to Judiciary Non-Civil in the House. But I'm just telling you, if we pass this out today, you are passing a new live felony where, to the senator's points from the floor, if any person shows up in a parking lot with a cell phone that they used for GPS just to get to the facility, they could be guilty under Georgia law of a felony per se just by showing up on that parking lot, even with zero intention. That is the absolute truth on this question. So I want to start there. But I briefly will speak to the amendment and say the reason that I introduced this amendment is because I want this body to stay focused on both sides of the cell phone issue whenever we take it up. Obviously, the senator from the 52nd is absolutely correct. We have a hole in federal law with respect to jamming in prisons that we don't have, or that the federal government doesn't have for itself, but that applies to our state prisons. It would be better to have administrative solutions to be able to use technology to prevent unlawful gang activity from behind bars, rather than trying to increase penalties. I don't want to be a broken record with y'all, because I respect your time, and I want to make sure that if I come to the well on criminal justice issues, I'm not just being repetitive. But I do want to emphasize that so often our response to policy failures is just to turn up the knob, turn up the heat on crimes and penalties, hoping that will solve the problem. But again, let's think about the fact that gang activity is happening behind bars for a reason. The reason it happens there is because we're throwing people away, and we're giving them no opportunity to connect meaningfully to their society, back, to people outside of facilities other than criminal activity. So when you relegate people to these facilities, let's call it 4 years, let's call it 10 years, let's call it 20 years, you're not taking away the incentive for people to use phones or other types of communications unlawfully. I don't know that the deterrent effect of this bill would really do a whole lot, because the correctional officers who are turning to gang activity and contraband as a way to stay alive don't really have a whole lot of hope or options besides that. The only balance that I want to offer you on cell phones is, you may have been aware in the last few years we've had a crisis in our Department of Corrections facilities, an absolute human rights humanitarian crisis. People who have been subject to elevated risk of murder, suicide, sexual assault, malnutrition, disease, you name it, right? We've had a total crisis, so much so that the DOJ has had to launch a formal investigation that's ongoing. And I want to go on the record and say that I trust Commissioner Oliver, the new commissioner, to meaningfully start to address these problems in a way that previous administrations have not. That being said, have y'all seen the cell phone videos behind the bars of our GDC facilities of dead inmates, people incarcerated who just hang over a railing dead for hours on end? Or a picture of the all brown, different shades of brown food that people are required to eat? You look at it and you're like, that's supposed to be chicken, right? Or the conditions with locks, padlocks on doors, because the locks we're using aren't operable, and we don't have budget to use actual safe locks for these facilities that we say that we're retrofitting. The only way that some people have been able to get the word out about these human rights violations, candidly, behind our Georgia prisons that taxpayers fund, unfortunately, is contraband cell phones. And I'm not condoning their use. I'm just saying the reality is that we wouldn't know about so many of the problems that we know about. The DOJ wouldn't know about so many of the problems that it launched its investigation for if it weren't for these contraband cell phones. I'm not even in this amendment asking you for photojournalism from people incarcerated behind bars. What I'm saying is, if we're going to block cell phone access behind bars, we have to recognize that for every gang member or for every gang violence activity that is coordinated in the way that Senator from the 29th described, how many people are using those same devices to contact family members, to contact their associates at work, to let them know if they're in for a short amount of time, this is what you need to do at the workplace to manage these problems while I'm away. How many of those people have legitimate uses that are not only critical to their mental health, but critical to a functioning society and their chances at reentry once they get back out? So what I'm asking you to do today with this amendment is to couple this increased penalty with a provision that would allow for free communication by people behind bars to family members, and will allow corrections to put reasonable limits on who they can talk to shut it down if there's evidence of criminal activity. All the reasonable stuff is in there, which you have on your desks. And I guess the reason I'm asking you to do this is because at the end of the day, we have to have balance. We can't just always turn up the heat. We can't just turn up the penalties and say, lock them up, throw them behind bars, because that's what gets us to the point where gang activity rules the day, because we're not paying attention to the basic needs that human beings have. And what happens? Gang activity fills the gap. It fills that hole that we leave when we don't pay attention to the most basic needs of the people inside. So I will promise you today, because I've learned a little something from my colleagues, if this amendment passes, I will support the bill, notwithstanding its flaws. How's that for a little legislative horse trading? And the reason I'll do that is because this is important enough to me. This humanitarian crisis and the fact that we need balance, we need access, reasonable access for families, I think we can do both. I think we can both work to limit gang activity from behind bars, but also make sure that we're not violating the 8th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, cruel and unusual punishment, to make sure that we're giving people the rehabilitation that we're really trying to give them in these facilities. So that is my proposition to you, but I also will remind you, this bill criminalizes showing up to a jail parking lot with your cell phone. And I will yield for any questions, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd.
Does the senator yield?
I sure do.
Senator, on line 34, it says it shall be unlawful for any person to come inside the guard lines established at any state or county correctional institution with a wireless telecommunications device or a standalone electronic device without the knowledge or consent of the warden, superintendent, or his or her designated representative. Is that what those lines say, Senator?
That's what I'm reading, sir.
Does the senator further yield?
I sure do.
Senator, is it not further true that on February 8th, a Georgia prison warden in Glenville, Georgia was arrested on racketeering charges?
I heard about that, Senator.
You heard about that, Senator? So is it not further true that lines 34 through 37 make a warden duplicitous if they get to decide who has permission and who does not, if they're part of the scheme, so to speak?
So I take the senator's point as being that, again, we're basically leaving felony liability completely up to the discretion of whoever's in charge of these facilities. And we know that historically some facilities have been compromised. Wardens, correctional officers who have been participating in some of these schemes. And so I think what the senator is emphasizing, if I'm not wrong, is that ultimately you might have one mom who shows up to go see her son in prison who the warden deems is the right kind of person and doesn't get charged, and you might have a different mom who shows up to see her son who might forget to have that she has a cell phone in her car or use a cell phone for GPS who may be charged. And so I think there's an arbitrariness to that decision-making, Senator, that the bill would be better served by having much clearer elements so that to make the senator from the 29th's point actually valid, then prosecutors would have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that there was an intent to distribute to somebody inside, et cetera, as opposed to leaving the blanket of criminal liability so wide that it's basically up to the discretion of prosecutors or wardens as to how to enforce it.
Does the senator further yield?
Let's keep going.
It's a simple saying from Savannah. Is it not true that what's good for the goose is good for the gander?
I have also heard that expression, Senator. I am familiar with that. I'll yield for maybe one more.
Senator, you do have another question. Senator from the 50th, you wish to rise.
Does the senator yield?
I do.
Have you visited a prison in the state of Georgia?
I have, sir.
Did you have your cell phone in your vehicle when you visited?
I did, sir.
Did they tell you to leave it in your vehicle, or did they search you, or were you able to bring it into prison when you were there?
So it may surprise you, Senator from the 50th, that I like media and I like talking to media. And one of the things that we did at that prison visit was to involve media in our attempt to gain access unannounced to the Lee Arundel prison up in Alto. And so what we did is that we took cell phones with us to document how close we were to the prison, but were not able to get in. So in fact, I did bring my cell phone either near the guard line or probably past the guard line because there was a documentary purpose to our being there and to showing that we were unable to gain access. So in that case, under this bill, I do think I would have been liable for a felony on that visit.
Were you able to gain access inside the facility?
Just inside the very first security part before the warden, who, God bless him, was only 11 days in and had to deal with us, was instructed to turn us away.
Had you been able to gain access, do you believe they would have allowed you to bring your cell phone inside the building?
That may not have been the case, and I certainly did not have the intention to distribute my cell phone to people inside. But what I will say is that based on the language of the guard line and the fact that that guard line is set facility by facility, and to the senator's point, it's curtilage just outside the wall, I'm almost 100% sure that my cell phone was already beyond the guard line when that exchange happened.
If a warden puts up a sign that said, "Leave your phones in your vehicle," is that consent from the warden to have your phone inside your vehicle?
I think that would be a question that prosecutors would want to do a test case on and potentially charge up. I mean, part of the issue that we have with these criminal statutes when they stay vague is that you leave the decision to somebody else. We'd like to make the decision here about what the scope is, but a bill like this leaves it to wardens and prosecutors to decide how aggressive they want to be. And if somebody simply shows up with their cell phone under this bill, I think they could be charged, sir.
Isn't it true, though, if a warden says, "Leave your cell phone in your vehicle," or "No cell phones beyond this point," that it is consent from the warden, or it is commonly, as it is commonly practiced now, where you can have your cell phone in your vehicle, that you would not be
guilty of a felony. You would not be charged with a felony because the warden knows of the policy, gives you consent to leave your phone in your vehicle, and that you would not be. And this is while it may be an argument on paper, it is not an argument that applies in real life if those policies are in existence.
I'll say this, Senator. I think that it's an interesting legal question you're asking. It's one that would have to be litigated. But I'll tell you, Georgia gun owners are already upset about the fact that they cannot bring guns onto the property. The lawful, gun owners that they are can't bring guns on inside the curtilage or near the curtilage of prisons and jails. And there are entire message boards and forums that, you can't believe it, but I've actually accessed these gun owner forums myself to look, and they're already concerned about the legal ambiguity about their Second Amendment rights and exercising them near jails or prisons. So I would say that this is only an expansion of that intrusive state power to limit people from having whatever they have constitutional rights to on them when they visit jails and prisons. If there are no further questions, I'll yield, Mr. President.
There are no further questions.
Thank you.
Senator from 22nd, do you wish to rise on this measure?
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to also speak to these two issues, but first by starting off by saying that I 100% understand why we're trying to put this legislation in place, without a doubt. I mean, there's no doubt that you're going to have some bad actors in there who are using telephones or using cell phones or whatever kind of communication there is, and we don't want persons to walk in there and give them those phones to commit a crime. But that's the key thing. What is the intent that you're actually trying to do here when you're actually saying that they can't go through the guardrail? We have created a strict liability offense. You can't get away from that. Give you an example. The driver of any vehicle shall obey the instructions of an official traffic control device applicable thereto, placed in accordance with this chapter, unless otherwise directed by a police officer, subject to the exceptions granted to the driver authorized emergency vehicle. That's a strict liability offense. Now, when you get pulled over under that kind of situation, is it possible that you may say, I was driving to go pick up my mother from the store or whatever it may be, and the officer gives you a break? Absolutely. But does he have to? He doesn't, because it's a strict liability offense. And when those situations happen, many times the deputy will say, you need to take that up to the judge. This is exactly what we've created here. We basically say, taking the phone in, whether it's a mistake or not, you're going to be potentially subject to felony prosecution. And this idea that it will go on a case-by-case basis like you do a red light just does not make any sense. It's not good policy. It's not the way we should be making a law. But that's what we've created, and there's no mental gymnastics that you can use to get away from that. That's what you've created. There is no intent here. The reason why we're doing this bill, we don't want a person to bring in a phone to help somebody commit a crime. That's what we should put out there, with the intent to help someone commit a criminal act. That's what we're trying to prevent. That's not what this does. It does say, if you bring something in accidentally, you are subject to felony prosecution. And then to say, well, they might give you a break or you can explain it, they don't have to. And quite frankly, the way we've been going and doing laws recently, how are we saying that they can have that kind of discretion? We don't give judges that kind of discretion. We're now saying that judges don't even get a discretion as far as sentences are concerned. Now we're saying, well, no, even though this says no discretion, you bring it over, you're subject to felony liability. Now all of a sudden it's going to be wardens and the officers who are there, they get all of this discretion to determine what you're going to be charged with. And then even then, but what are you being charged with? A strict liability offense. You can't get around that. Now that's the intent. That's the intent. But I also put it in this, also I'll give you another example. You have possession of cocaine, for instance, drug charges. Could you tell someone, I'm on hard times, I'm addicted, give me a break? They may or may not. But possession of cocaine is possession of cocaine. You are subject to felony violation. But we also have with intent to distribute and with intent to sell. We differentiate those two. This bill basically, once again, creates a strict liability offense. You cannot have the phone, period. You can give any sob story that you want to give, you are subject to a felony offense. And to give them a break is not following the law, because this does not say with the intent to do anything. To give them a break, you are actually, as a prosecutor or as a deputy, breaking the law. This has nothing to do with saying that, well, if they're bringing the phone in for this purpose or that purpose, then they can actually get away with it. There's nothing in this bill that allows that. Absolutely nothing. Second aspect of this is there is no penalty range. 38 through 39 says any person other than a correctional officer who violates subsection C of this code section shall be guilty of a felony, period. That's what it says. Subsection C is what we've just been talking about with the telecommunications device. Then we were told we'll go down to line 40 through 44, and that's going to tell you your penalty. Well, let's read it. Let's just read what the lines say. Any person who violates subsection B of this code section, subsection B is when you come in with intoxicating materials or you come in with a gun, not the phone. Any person who violates subsection B of this code section, and any correctional officer who violates subsection C of this code section shall be guilty of a felony, and then from there we do their prison, we do their basic punishment. It does not say that a person who violates subsection C, which is the communications part, what they're subject to. It does not have that in there. You can't just sit up there and make it up. It doesn't say it. It clearly says if you violate subsection B, that's the part with the gun. That's also the part with the drugs. And if you're a correctional officer who violates subsection C of this code section, it clearly says what penalty you're going to get. This does not include the subsection C with the phones. As I said, I understand what we're trying to do, but we have to do it correctly. We can't just make up laws. Not standing in the well, that we sit up there and we see with our own eyes and we realize it and we read it and we're like, yeah, you got a point, but I'm just going to just say whatever. And I'm just going to say, well, the penalty is listed in there. It's not. Well, we're going to give discretion to the deputies about who they're going to arrest and who they can't. Based on what? There's no discretion in here. It says you cannot have it. And if they use their discretion, quite frankly, they're violating the law. That's just the bottom line. And we should not let this go through under those circumstances. We could fix this bill, we could table it, fix it, and come back to it. I get it. We need to make sure persons don't bring in phones and cause crimes. But we need to also make sure that we set the right example that we're going to do this thing correctly. And with that, Mr. President, I'll yield unless there's any questions.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you. I yield well.
We have a late arriving amendment. Secretary, read the caption.
Senator Setzler of the 37th and others offer the following amendment. Amendment 2 to the Senate Committee substitute for Senate Bill 159 by inserting after the word felony on line 39 the following: punishable by imprisonment for not less than 1 year nor more than 10 years. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I recognize Senator from the 37th to speak to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, Amendment 2, which is being passed out now, would insert some clarity into this. If you look on lines 39, the debate earlier centered on shall be guilty of a felony. It doesn't state a specific term. Historically, there have been some defaults of what that means in terms of minimum of one or more than one. But what this does, it does two things. It states the minimum prison of 1 year, maximum of 10, so it does put some clarity on what the max can be. And what it also does is, and some may consider this a benefit, some would consider this a drawback, but it does recognize the seriousness of bringing this in. What this applies to, as the senator said a moment ago, just for clarity, prison guards carrying in cell phones, this bill would have still a mandatory minimum of 10, which is probatable. Citizens bringing in guns, knives, and that kind of contraband would still be, again, 10 or more. What this contemplates is citizens bringing in cell phones, the circumstances we talked about, It says felony in the bill. This amendment doesn't change that, but what this does do, Mr. President, it clarifies 1 to 10, indicating the potential seriousness of that, but it also, after conviction is gained by operation of Title 17 of our code, a judge at their sole discretion, if it's a 1 to 10 or less felony, in sentencing can adjudicate that as a misdemeanor and give a sentence of 12 months. That's standard to 1 to 5 felony, 1 to 3 felony, 1 to 10 felony. So it does create an off-ramp, if you will, for fact patterns that are really not criminal in nature at all. But it does also give the courts the ability to punish for up to 10 years for folks who are, in a calculated, maligned way, bringing in contraband to our prisons, which is a very serious issue. So with that, Mr. President, glad to take a question.
You do have a question, Senator. Senator from the 14th, Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. President. To my colleague, will you yield?
I do.
Senator, I understand that your amendment is designed to fill the gap on fleshing out what the penalty would be for that one violation. Would you agree with me, though, that this still does not address the fact that there is no intent element in that underlying crime, that is still a strict liability crime as currently written?
I'm less clear this bill changes the standard. I mean, we have a standard today that exists for bringing the contraband in. I'm less clear that this makes a policy shift in that way. And I believe that I believe the intent element is still going to be present for a credible prosecution under this. I think we owe, the legislature owes the process clarity on sentencing. And I think this gives the court some options.
Senator, will you yield for one last question?
Yes, sir.
I know you've had the honor of serving on some manner of judiciary committee for a very long time. Have you ever seen a crime that you are sure has an intent element that must be proved at trial, that does not say some adverb like intentionally, willfully, knowingly, in the actual text of the new crime itself, sir?
Anticipating your next question, which specific statute that would be, I can't manufacture one from just out of the air. I do know some criminal statutes are intended to be per se. I do believe the nature of this is that it's is going to require a criminal intent to get a conviction. This is not designed to be a per se offense, and I think it's something, because again, we're not changing the framework, we're just simply taking the existing framework and applying it to cell phones in a different way. As you can see on lines 29 through 33, there's an existing framework in our statute that's not fundamentally changed by this. We're taking the existing framework, we're copying the language, and we're setting a different punishing regime for prison guards with cell phones and citizens with knives and firearms.
Okay, well, with wonder at the inference of an intent element, I thank you for your time.
Sure. And with that, Mr. President, yield the will.
Okay, Senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Senator from the 29th, would you like to close?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate those speaking out. I appreciate the continued friendship and wisdom offered by my friend from the 22nd. And I appreciate my friend from the 37th for what they've done. This is very simple legislation. We can throw as many mirrors and hypotheticals at it as we can. I'm not shocked that once again we've got the vein of the poor innocent criminal attempting to outweigh those of crime victims and others, especially crime victims who are sitting at home late at night watching television and they answer the door only to be assassinated for doing nothing more than answering their door. So I think we've heard it from the senator from the 15th and others that this technology is a cancer within our jails, within our correctional facilities, and within our prisons. And I would support the amendment from the senator from the 37th, and I ask that you vote down the amendment from the senator from the 14th because of its intent. And thank you. With that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. We're now to Amendment 1. Is there an objection to Amendment 1 being added to the underlying bill? Objection from the author of the 29th. Would you like to speak to the objection? No objection. We can do yays and nays. We can do hand vote, or we can go on the board. Which one? Yays and nays. I should have known that. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the adoption of Amendment 1, the yeas are 22 and the nays are 33, and this amendment has failed. On Amendment 2, offered by the senator from the 37th, is there objection to Amendment 2? Hearing no objection, Amendment 2 is adopted. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Hearing none, the committee substitute as amended is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. Senator from the second, for what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, is it not true that if we truly want to crack down on the illegal cell phones inside of Georgia prisons, we will raise the salaries of those employed by the Georgia Department of Corrections to help reduce the amount of those engaged in racketeering? Is that not true?
Secretary is passionate about what he speaks. Senator from the 56th.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr.
State
President.
your inquiry.
Isn't it true this Senate last year passed $9,000 pay increases for those correctional officers leading the state?
Senator knows of what he speaks. Senator from the 29th, for what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, is it not true if we care about state correctional officers, we'll vote green on this in order to protect them more?
It is very true, Senator. Every senator has a green and red button. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 34, the nays are 20. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Senator from the 19th. I recognize Senator from the 19th for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate insists to its position on House Bill 18.
Senator, the Chairman of Appropriation has moved that the Senate insists on this position on the substitute. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 18 by Representative Burns of the 159th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act making and providing appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending July 30th, 2023, known as the General Appropriations Act. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The chairman of appropriations has moved that the Senate insists on its position as far as the budget is concerned, the House Bill 18. Is there objection? There is objection. It's from the mountain man himself back there. All right. You want to speak to your motion? You good? All right, Stiller, you like to speak to your motion? Huh? Any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying, or we'll put it on the board. All those in favor of it signify by voting the yay switch. Those opposed, the nay switch. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from 50th, what purpose did you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Isn't an objection to this insistent a support of the House position?
Hey, the senator has made a wise statement. On the passage of the amendment, the yeas are 54 and the nays are 1. So the motion passes, and we will now insist to our position, and I'm sure we're heading for a conference committee here pretty soon, so we'll find out tomorrow. I recognize the majority leader for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Tuesday, February 28th.
The majority leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Tuesday, February 10th, 28th. All those in favor of that motion will do the announcements. I keep trying to get ahead here, so. All right, the announcements, Mr. Secretary.
The Rules Committee meeting will happen upon adjournment in 450 of the Capitol. The Agricultural and Consumer Affairs Committee meeting will happen at 2 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. The Transportation Committee meeting will happen at 2 p.m. in Mezzanine 1 of the Capitol. The Health and Human Service Committee meeting will happen at 3 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. The Government Oversight Committee meeting will happen at 3 p.m. in 307 CLOB. The Science and Technology Committee meeting will happen at 4 p.m. in 310 CLOB. The Finance Committee meeting will happen at 4 p.m. in Mezzanine 1 of the Capitol. The Judiciary Committee meeting will happen at 5 p.m. in 307 CLOB. The Public Safety Committee meeting will happen at 5 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. The Ethics Committee meeting will happen at 6 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. And the State and Local Government Operations Committee will happen at 7 p.m. in Mezzanine 1 of the Capitol. That completes your order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 19th for our announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appropriations Subcommittee chairs, if you can meet me for about 2 or 3 minutes right over here in the corner as soon as we adjourn. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Thank you, Senator. The majority leader has moved that we stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Tuesday morning, February 28th. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it. Go to your committee meetings. We're adjourned. Thank you.